Bismillah, alhamdulillah, wassalatu wassalamu ala rasulillah. Welcome to another episode of Haqiqatjou, where we discuss religion and politics, the two least controversial subjects. As always, I am your host, Daniel Haqiqatjou, and today we have a lot to talk about, a lot to discuss in world events and the world of social media, and I'm very happy to be back with you. It's been a long time, been at least a couple of weeks, and I've been busy, as you know, working on my book, trying to complete it. And alhamdulillah, I'm happy to report that there's a lot of progress being made. It's turning out to be a very long book. It's going to be about 500 pages, 500-page book, inshallah. And there's like about 1,000 references, 1,000 footnotes. So, yeah, it's going to be substantial. About Rand's agenda to reform Islam, the US government's agenda to reform Islam. And it has a lot of explosive information that you will have access to and will be able to read. You'll be able to, inshallah, at some point be able to download it for free if you want, or you can purchase a copy, physical copy as well. So yeah, that's what I've been working on. That's why the content being published is not as frequent as you'd like. It's because I had to set aside social media to a certain extent to focus on this book full time. So that's what I've been working on. But yeah, today we have a lot to discuss. Before we get into it, I'll just remind you to subscribe to our newsletter. And our newsletter is weekly. It goes out like Fridays usually. And it has a summary of everything that's happened on social media from the MuslimSkeptic channels. It has summaries of the articles that we've published on MuslimSkeptic.com, summaries of the videos that we've put out. And so if you want a one-stop shop for all the happenings of Muslim Skeptic, get a weekly digest, you can subscribe to the newsletter. The link is in the description below. And you can get that and read it if you don't have time to follow everything that we put on our various channels. So today I want to talk about a number of issues. I want to talk about the recent arrest and imminent extradition of Andrew Tate to the UK. This is the big news that came out, and on social media you had some celebrating and some very angry, confused, disappointed. And you'll be surprised. You'll be surprised at which groups, which people fell into which camp. Celebrators or the people who were shocked and dismayed. And so I was celebrating. SNEAKO was also celebrating, our brother SNEAKO. And he actually made dua. Actually, he said this on his stream, that he had taken a trip to Medina, and he sometimes goes to Medina just for a break, a spiritual reset. He says that Medina really gives him a lot of ease and comfort spiritually. And so he went there, and he says that he made dua that that Tate would actually be deported, or that Tate would face consequences for the kind of harm he's done and tried to do to SNEAKO. So that dua was answered, it seems, by Allah. And so this is something that he was talking about on his stream, and we'll get into the details of Tate's arrest, why this is deserved, why we should be happy about this, and the different reactions to that. I also want to talk about the updates with Iran, because the war seems to be ramping up after a couple of months of ceasefire, supposed ceasefire, the reclosing of the Strait of Hormuz. I want to update you on what's happening geopolitically, what's happening in Gaza, what these Israeli politicians like Smotrich, the finance minister, has been saying. I want to update you on that. And then I want to react to some of the feminist resurgence on social media, on Instagram, on TikTok, everywhere basically on social media. There's a resurgence of feminist narratives. And I want to react to a couple of these TikToks for you and give you an assessment, inshallah. And we'll be doing more of that moving forward as well, especially as I get finished with my book and get back to regular posting of content. So that's what we're going to discuss, inshallah, on the show. Make sure to hit the like button if you haven't. Subscribe to the channel if you haven't. You can submit super chats as well. I will prioritize your super chat, read it as long as it is relevant, and that'll come at the end of the show, inshallah, and I'll address any questions that you had. Okay, so anyway, let's get started. Oh, there is another update, actually. So I was scheduled to debate Avery of God Logic this Saturday. I was going to be in Dallas, Modern Day Debate, hosting another convention, and I was slotted. I'd been slotted for months to debate God Logic on Trinity versus Tawheed. This was the topic that they wanted to debate. That was so critical to debate. Another Trinity versus Tawheed debate. I said, okay, maybe there's some ideas, some new arguments that I can share on that, analysis that I can share on that. Even though it's like beating a dead horse, like the Trinity is basically a dead horse. It's been, debated to death, and there's a strategy that these Christian apologists have. And I'll explain what that strategy is. But this debate was scheduled. I was preparing for it, getting an opening statement ready, doing some academic research, looking at some of this analytic theology on the Trinity, diving into those waters of nonsense, and spent some time doing that. And then I assumed that everything was going as planned. So the organizers asked for, what's your preferred format? I gave my preferred format. It's the format that I have for all of these Christian debates, pretty much. And then Avery rejects it. Says, no, I don't agree to this format. And what was the contention was that in these debates, there's usually an open dialogue period, about an hour of open dialogue. And I don't like when I debate someone. There are certain debaters, okay, and it's all the Christian apologists are like this, basically, that they overtalk. They interrupt and they overtalk, and they just want to dominate the conversation, okay? And I get it. Like, if you're a debater, you want to bring your arguments to the fore. You want to press the issue, really force your opponent to respond to the argument that you've made, so that you can corner them, so you can make them uncomfortable, so that you can put them on the back foot. Like, that's debating 101. But if the debater just goes too far with that, then they're just going to be over talking, interrupting incessantly, because they don't have like the common courtesy or the IQ to understand that it's a tit for tat. Like, there are gentlemen's rules with debate. There's gentlemanly behavior, like an unsaid agreement or unsaid understanding that, okay, you press the issue, now shut up for a second, let the other person press their side of it. And that's usually, like, if you are debating with people of a certain IQ, a certain level of adab, basic common courtesy. And there are people like that are non-Muslim who have common courtesy. I've debated them, and it goes off without a hitch, because you understand that you're going to speak for your piece, and then the other person, when you stop speaking, then the other person speaks their piece, and you shut up. And it goes back and forth like that. And as long as someone is not trying to rudely just dominate the conversation and not allowing the conversation to move to any area where it be, you're on defense, then that goes fine. There's no problem with that. You can have like an open dialogue, and it really will be a dialogue, and the audience benefits, you benefit. It's a good time all around. But what these Christians do, like, they don't have this gentlemanly understanding because they're not gentlemen. Maybe they don't have the IQ to understand what dialogue is supposed to be. They just want to dominate by interrupting, by pressing their retarded points over and over again. And there's a reason for this. There's a reason why Christian apologists have to do this, because they know that they're arguing a losing case. Like, no one understands the Trinity, basically. The only way that you can defend the Trinity is if you start saying that logic doesn't matter anymore. Like, we don't accept logic. We don't accept logic. We don't accept like basic rationality. We have to, like, if you look at analytic theology, like the bulk of analytic theology dealing with the Trinity over the past 30 years is creating like an alternative logic that makes sense of the Trinity, like abandoning classical logic, abandoning predicate logic, like abandoning the laws of identity and transitivity, abandoning all that to invent like a new type of logic, quote unquote. It's just logic by name, just for the purpose of making the Trinity rational and absolving the Trinity of its blatant contradictoriness, right? That's what the bulk of Christian apologists debating the Trinity are about. And so if that is the reality of the Trinity, that it's something that's indefensible, basically, you want to use any tactic to prevent an audience from realizing that. And one of their main tactics is constantly interrupting, constantly gish-galloping the opponent. Whether it's a Muslim, whether it's a Unitarian Christian, whether it's, an atheist philosopher or whatever. That's their entire game plan. That's their strategy. They have there's no other avenue to defend an illogical contradiction like the Trinity. And so it's important. So that in that open dialogue, say, look, I want open dialogue, but it needs to be structured, because I don't trust Avery. I had a debate with God Logic already on a subject that he determined, like he's on offense. It's the Islamic dilemma, the autistic dilemma. He's on offense. He's going to be attacking Islam. I have to play defense the whole time. And he clearly is not a gentleman. He wants to overtalk. He interrupted. Like, that's his method for debate. He can't have a fair debate. So I want structure. I want 2 minutes of speaking time alternating for that hour. I think that's fair. That ensures exactly equal speaking time. What could be more fair than that? Avery says no. Avery says no. I don't want these 2-minute segments. It has to be unstructured. It has to be unstructured, or it has to be in a interrogation cross-examination format, which again is the same thing, because cross-examination, you can interrupt at all times. If you're the one who's responding, if you're being cross-examined, the floor is yours, and the cross-examiner can only ask questions, so you can talk, as desired. And then if you're the cross-examiner, you can also interrupt constantly with questions. So it ends up being like a waste of time. So anyway, I said, look, fine. He wants to have unstructured hour. I want to have a structured hour of open dialogue. Let's split it down the middle. 30 minutes the way I want it, 30 minutes the way he wants it. No problem. No problem. Isn't that fair? Says no. My way or the highway. It has to be the way I want it or nothing at all. So I said, F off, basically. Like, forget it. I didn't actually curse at anyone. I wasn't even talking to him directly. I was talking through the organization, through Modern Day Debate. But, forget it. I don't need to, it's very clear what your game plan is. Like, it's very clear the length that you have to go to. You won't even accept a 50-50 split. Like, it's either 100% what I want or nothing. That's basically his position. So, okay, it's clear, what your strategy is. It's clear, if it were equal speaking time, you'd get destroyed on the subject of the Trinity. And so anyone who is going to debate the Trinity in the future, Muslim apologists, just be aware that this is their strategy, if you weren't aware already. Their strategy is to interrupt, to gish gallop, to make sure that you can't string together more than 30 seconds without being interrupted. And also their whole strategy with Tawheed is to make it seem like, oh, Tawheed is so complicated. Like, you really realize that the Christians, these apologists, recognize that they're always on the back foot. They're trying to defend the indefensible contradiction of the Trinity. That, okay, we have to do something. We're bleeding followers. Like, it is a avalanche of apostasy of Christians becoming Muslim. And this is a crisis. We have to do something about this. And so they have certain tactics. One major tactic that you've seen, and I've discussed this, I've debated it twice already, is the Islamic dilemma. They're like, oh, well, these Muslims have a logical problem where they're critiquing the Trinity. Let's create a logical problem for Islam. And therefore, that way the Muslims will be on the back foot. The Muslims will have to defend a logical contradiction. Like, this is the way that they think, okay, in this double-digit IQ world of Christian apology. And so they invented this dilemma, this logical problem. And how is it a logical problem? It's just a logical problem if you read the Quran in the most uncharitable, implausible way that no Muslim in history and no figure within history read the Quran. You have to stretch the meaning of the Quran, read into it your nonsense problem or dilemma, and then it's a dilemma. But if you just read the Quran according to what the Quran says, you read it according to the tafsir that have been written 1,300 years ago, there is no dilemma. There is no logical problem. So that's our one strategy, is the Islamic dilemma. The other strategy that they use is just, oh, Tawheed is so complicated. Oh, what do you mean by, the uncreated Quran? Or how do you understand Yadullah? And how do you understand that Allah is above the throne? Oh, this is so complicated. And so they want to create an equivalence, like, oh, see, Tawheed and the Islamic conception of Allah is so intractable and difficult to understand. That's just like the Trinity. We Christians are just honest. We recognize that the Trinity is a mystery and that it is above human understanding. But these Muslims unfairly attack the Trinity when they have the same problems. People in glass houses shouldn't be throwing stones, Muslims. Like, this is their whole strategy. And a lot of these Christians buy that up. Like, they eat that right up. When the reality of it is that, no, Islamic theology, yeah, there are areas that are more complicated. There are areas where there have been disputes amongst the Islamic theologians over the centuries. And that's just the nature of theology. Like, that's just the nature of when you're talking about God, when you're talking about the Creator, and the Creator is by nature transcending the created world, and by nature is something that is beyond human ken, human understanding in certain aspects. You're going to have areas of complexity. You're going to have areas of dispute and debate. That's the case in every religion. But the problem with the Trinity is more than this. The problem with the Trinity is not that there are aspects of the Trinity that are ineffable or transcendental or difficult to understand. That's not our critique of the Trinity. Our critique of the Trinity is that it's contradictory. It's a logical contradiction. Actually, it's multiple logical contradictions. That's our problem with the Trinity, not that it has certain aspects that are difficult to understand. Because, yeah, that's the case with certain aspects of Islamic theology as well. So that kind of straw man argument, or that straw man portrayal of our critique of the Trinity, that's their second major tactic. And the whole ability to pull that off in a debate really depends on your ability to be able to interrupt the Muslim speaker. Because they want to create a situation, right? Because in all of these Trinity versus Tawheed debates, if you look at the history, like all of the great memorable debates about Muslims versus Christians, whether you look at Ahmad Didat, whether you look at Zakir Naik, look at Muhammad Hijab's debate, famous debate, him versus David Wood, okay, where he absolutely destroys David Wood. This was a wake-up call. Like, this is a wake-up call for this new age of social media. When Muhammad Hijab absolutely decimates David Wood, it created a crisis for these Christian apologists. And they realized that, look, we are getting our rear ends handed to us by these Muslim debaters. Muhammad Hijab was the last straw. We need to turn this around. And so they game planned, like, okay, if we can just take this Trinity versus Tawheed debate, and instead of making it a loss, like a big fat L every time, especially with these new arguments that some of these debaters are coming up with, let's just turn it into a draw. Let's turn it into a draw where, okay, the Trinity, yeah, it's confusing, it's complicated. Yeah, no two Christians will have the same understanding of this theology, but guess what? It's the same with the Muslims. Guess what? It's the same with Islam. So it's a draw. They want a draw. They want a draw. And how can you get a draw? Well, it's you use this kind of argumentative strategy. And very importantly, for debate structure, you have to have the ability and the right to constantly interrupt your Muslim opponent. If you notice, like that famous Muhammad Hijab David Wood debate, like it was very structured. The Muslim, okay, Muhammad Hijab goes on stage, there's the microphone, and he's able to talk for 5 minutes uninterrupted. That's a disaster. Like, that's a disaster for Christianity. So they want to avoid that as much as possible. Anyway, so that's why the debate fell through. And I'm not losing any sleep over it. Like, whatever. Like, and you guys, how many more debates of Trinity versus Tawheed do you need? Like, everything that needs to be said has been said. It's just the next frontier in these debates. Like, if I'll give you that perspective, like a meta analysis, a meta overview, like what's the meta of the Trinity versus Tawheed debates? I think that what really is the next move that Muslims can make is just increasingly bring out the implications of this contradiction between three persons, one God. Three persons, but one nature and one essence. Okay, yeah, obviously that's contradictory, but the Christians will have their explanations. How can you create analogies? How can you create scenarios, like a picture for an audience that's easily conveyable, that really foregrounds the contradiction in a way that's difficult, that's increasingly difficult for the Christian to avoid by using jargon from logic, talking about relative identity, talking about hypostasis and all of this nonsense? Like, how can you really cut through that with rhetoric and creating analogies, creating an image for the audience that just makes it embarrassingly obvious how contradictory that is? So that's moving in the realm of rhetoric, creativity. And so that's what I was trying to do for this debate. I had, material prepared, and I think that Muslims continue to evolve, continue to advance your game. Just keep these Christians on the back foot, because they're losing. Like, at the end of the day, like, the apostasy rates for Christianity are the highest amongst any other religion. The rate that Christians leave Christianity compared to any other major religion is the highest. And so we can, and the biggest fear that they have are Christians becoming Muslim. And so this is what we can do for dawah purposes, inshallah. Okay, so going to Andrew Tate, speaking of converts, from Christianity to Islam, you have Andrew Tate. And, my thoughts with Andrew Tate, you followed me over the years, that I was very happy that he became Muslim, announced his Islam, was praying, and he got attacked by compassionate imams. He got attacked by the feminist Muslims. If you remember, some of these women were saying that if Andrew Tate becomes Muslim, I'm going to leave Islam. I'm going to leave Islam. Like, these munafiqat, these hypocrites. So I said, this is really unjustifiable. He's a new Muslim. And yes, he has this background of pimping, basically, like literally being a pimp. He has this background in all kinds of haram industries. But, that's what Islam is about. Islam is about turning a new leaf, tawbah, turning to Allah, realizing the flaws in our nature, realizing our sins, turning to Allah, begging for forgiveness as a Muslim, with worship of Him alone without partners. That's what Islam is all about. So Andrew Tate has seen the light. He's become Muslim, and now is the time to change the direction that he's going. And I said very clearly, like, no one should take Andrew Tate as a role model. Number one, we're happy that he became a Muslim, but we will see. We will see how he turns out. We will see if he actually makes good on the words of his tongue, what he's saying, what he professes. We'll see if he makes good on that and actually changes the direction of his life, stops the pimping, stops the depravity, stops the gambling, stops all of the degeneracy. Like, let's see if he actually makes an attempt to represent Islam. And that's something that never happened. After years, it never happened. And I wish that were like the worst of it. Like, I wish that were the biggest problem with Andrew Tate. In fact, it got much worse. So he was detained in Romania. He was kept in solitary confinement on the orders of the U.S. government, coordinating through Romania. Obviously, it was political. Obviously, Andrew Tate's message. He was notable for 2 or 3 main things. Okay, number one is that he was anti-feminist, and he's starting to gain this popularity at a time of peak woke. Nothing that he was actually saying was that revolutionary, but the fact that he was so popular in saying it. I've analyzed his content, like his interview with Piers Morgan, where Piers Morgan like interrogates him on some of his anti-feminist positions. I say that like this isn't revolutionary. In fact, Andrew Tate is giving some of the weaker arguments against feminism, and he's not actually representing a traditional worldview. This is kind of a cucked version of red pill, whatever. But he was hitting against feminism in a way that no one had reached that level of notoriety hitting feminism before. So that was one thing. He was also against the COVID psyop. He was also against the COVID lockdowns. He was defying that. He was counter-signaling all of that messaging coming from these major governments internationally, these liberal governments. So those were the 2 main things. And then thirdly, he also has counter-signaled Israel. He's counter-signaled Zionism. So all these things make him a political target, and there's just this convenient reason or excuse to detain him because, some of these women who he was pimping, some of these prostitutes that he was pimping say that, it was not fully consensual. Like, on this one night, after 1,000 nights of being a whore, on this one night, it wasn't 100% consensual. So therefore, he trafficked me. I was being trafficked. And it's rape. Like, that's that's the argument against Andrew Tate. So this is the Me Too movement. It's the leftovers of the Me Too movement because everyone realized what a sham this is, what a scam the Me Too movement actually is. Just another way for women to avoid accountability, as I'll describe. But it's something that Andrew Tate cannot shake, like this kind, and it's an international issue because he is like, these women are traveling to Romania, they're crossing national borders, there's trafficking charges involved, which makes it a little bit more complicated than a simple prostitution case or a simple Me Too case. You have to get the international police involved, basically. And so that's why he's being extradited from the UK, from the United States. And so let's look at SNEAKO's reaction, because it was funny to see. And I'll give you more of an analysis of the charges against him. Because I debated this. I debated Destiny, if you recall. We had a formal debate, me versus Destiny, who, if you don't know, he's another one of these liberal degenerates. and we had a full debate, and I was defending Andrew Tate, and Destiny was saying, no, Andrew Tate is a trafficker, he's a rapist, he deserves to be buried under the jail. And I was defending Andrew Tate at that time, and the arguments that I used, I stand by those arguments, and I'll review, the points that I was making at that time. But yeah, Destiny is even worse of a degenerate. Like, and I've shared that, like, Destiny, for example, thirsting after underage girls, like thirsting, like making jokes about child pornography and other women accusing Destiny of molesting them, actually. So he has a whole rap sheet of degenerate behavior as well, and he's supposed to be like the white knight. That's usually how it goes, right? The simps and the white knights, the ones that are the loudest about simping for women, they tend to be the ones who are the most degenerate, right? So, okay. So the first irony of this, Donald Trump will allow Andrew and Tristan Tate to be extradited to the UK. The White House has refused to intervene despite pressure from figures in Donald Trump's inner circle. The U.S. president will not step in to block the brothers' return to the UK, per the Telegraph. So the UK is saying that they're pursuing these charges against the Tates for trafficking, non-consensual behavior, sexual assault, basically. Okay, so this is SNEAKO reacting.
They're guilty. Allegedly. At the time, I did believe it. I believe that they were innocent, but you look into it more, and you look into what the Loverboy method is, and you look into what that is. They literally said that they were recruiting women to pimp them out. They had a course talking about how you could become a pimp. Word for word, they just spell out exactly what the Loverboy method is. They say, this is how you do it. If you want a girl to fall in love with you so that you could traffic her, buy my course and I'll teach you how. So first, you make her fall in love with you. You have sex with her. Then you program her. Then you take her passport. Then she's in love with you. Then you put her on OnlyFans. It's like, that's what the Loverboy method is, word for word. That's what pimping is, allegedly. I don't know what I'm talking about, allegedly. To a T, that's exactly what pimping is, and they just did it online. And they did it in Europe with white women. Look at that, too. You know what's so funny? Is that the Tates that are grifting the white supremacists, like the white incels, the skin worshippers, they literally got rich pimping out European white women because they were better for money. Like, they made more money. Do you think that they were pimping out Asian girls and black girls? No, they moved to Romania because the crimes, they thought they were going to get away with it. They said, Romania's the third world country. I could be a mob boss. I'm a mafia. I could bribe the police. I'm like the cartel of Romania. That's why they moved there. One. Two, for the women, because they know white women are the best clientele. So they make the best prostitutes for Indians jerking off. So these are two black men move to Eastern Europe, predominantly white country, to pimp out white women, destroying the birth rate, and then now the skin worshippers are like, yeah, he's one of me. Yeah. 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 You fall for anything. Like, you guys will, all you have to say is a couple things about deporting, and then immediately you could just, retweet Tommy Robinson, you're good. Not only that, as you're saying, Me Too feminist movement. The Me Too movement, what was that, 2016? A lot of that was completely blown out of proportion. The reason that a lot of people, and even me at the time, thought that this was a Matrix attack was because of that. Like, people, they're guilty.
So, I agree with a lot of what SNEAKO said there, obviously. The irony of, because the biggest supporters of Andrew Tate right now are the same people who are constantly saying, deport SNEAKO, deport Muslims. Muslims are grooming gangs. They need to be kicked out. These terrorists need to be kicked out of our country. Those are the people who are saying that free Tate, free Andrew Tate, he's innocent. So I was joking on X, saying that, okay, these white nationalists, okay, people like Nick Fuentes are so concerned about the white women and white culture, but here you have Andrew Tate, who his whole claim to fame, his millions of dollars is from pimping white women, from pimping white women. And so this is like the actual grooming gang. Okay, by your definition, this is the actual grooming gang generating millions, if not tens of millions of dollars, and you want him to stay. You want him to be sheltered and safe in the United States. Interesting standards there that you have. But but SNEAKO and Muslims praying in Times Square, Muslims who are, they just want to pray basically in Times Square. Oh, deport them, kick them out. They're the supremacists. This is Islamo-fascist supremacy. We want it out of our country. This is a Christian country, but we want the pimps. We want the Muslim pimps in our Christian country to pimp out our white Christian women with the lily white skin. Keep the pimps, but the Muslims praying in Times Square, get out. The Muslims playing the call to prayer, the adhan, get out. Kick these sand N-words out. That's really consistent. That's really brilliant, actually. So this is SNEAKO is having a good time pointing out this double standard. Yeah, it's a big L after L for these white nationalists lately. Not only is Donald Trump turning out to be the worst president in history, let alone like the worst Republican president, lame duck president at this point, like breaking all of his campaign promises, getting the America into another forever war for Israel in the Middle East. Also, Argentina lost the World Cup. Did you see this? Like, obviously you had Netanyahu and Ben Gvir, who are all in support of what's his face, Argentina, and Messi, supporting them, but also the white nationalists. The white nationalists were saying, yeah, white excellence. Destroy the brownoids. Destroy the brownoids, the Muslim countries. The white Argentinian team. Like, did I miss something? Like, I thought Argentina's in South America. Like, why are you counting Argentinians as white? Like, how is Argentina, last time I checked, was not in Europe. It's actually in South America, and they speak Spanish. So I don't think, at best they're mixed. They're mixed race. Okay, so, and we know the white nationalist standards, like one drop of non-white blood means you're not white. So how is Argentina an example of white excellence? Actually, it seems to be a good argument for race mixing. Argentina should be seen as the exemplar of the benefits of race mixing. Like, when Europeans start mixing with the South Americans or the Native Americans, they generate like a super breed of humans, of soccer superstars, or football as you call it. Football superstar. Brazil, Argentina, all the greats. Okay, that seems to be like the best argument for race mixing that you can make. Like, Europe, here you have a country of, not the physically peak specimens of the human species, but as soon as the Europeans go and they start mixing around with other races, like, you get good results. That's what I'm seeing here from the World Cup. Isn't that the conclusion we should draw? But the white nationalists, Argentina, the pure white race, pure white excellence. Like, okay, you retard. These idiots. And yeah, because every time a Muslim country lost in the World Cup, I wasn't watching the games. I didn't even watch the final. Like, I don't really care about soccer that much. But even though you can like do a lot of engagement farming by appealing to whatever countries, and like, I don't need to sell myself. I don't like soccer that much. Soccer is not interesting. It's good exercise. Like, it's a good sport to play. It's a good sport to play. But for watching, it's like one of those sports like baseball also. Baseball can be enjoyable to play. Less enjoyable than soccer, but it's still fun. Like, I used to play some baseball back in school. Hockey is another one. It can be fun to play, but watching it, like, it's not that enjoyable to watch. But basketball, you can enjoy watching it. You can enjoy playing it. That's more my speed. So anyway, the World Cup. And yeah, everyone knows it was rigged. So what's the point even? By the way, did the clip with SNEAKO, did the sound play all right? Can you guys tell me if you can hear the sound? SNEAKO's in the chat. Everyone's saying SNEAKO's in the chat. What did SNEAKO say? Deport Tate. Yes. Live SNEAKO. How's it going, bro? I don't know if SNEAKO wants to join. I'll message him. Yeah, he might not have time. But I'll just send a message. While I'm messaging him, tell me, is the sound all right? Put a 1 in the chat if the sound was fine with the SNEAKO clip. Oh, okay. He does want to come on. All right, let me set that up. We'll get SNEAKO. Inshallah. Let's see. The best way to do it is Zoom. Do a Zoom meeting. Okay, let me see. I've never had to like, because he usually, or I have Discord too. We can use Discord. I don't like Discord. Let me just try that. Give me 1 second. Okay. Let's see this. Hey, Songam, can you hear me? Yeah, just give me 1 second to set up the camera because I'm live right now. I have to set up the stream. Oh, well, why'd you leave? Like, you're not streaming at the same time, are you? All right, that's fine. All right, let me just add you. How's it going, bro?
Assalamu alaikum. Can you hear me?
Walaikum assalam. Yep.
How are you?
Good,
Thanks for
bro.
talking
We're
to
just
me.
talking about you.
Yeah, I saw the thumbnail. I was just tuning in. Not trying to like hijack your stream. I was just watching, and it was interesting.
Yeah, I know you're busy, so but I'm glad you can join. It's like better than I was expecting because I was just I was going over your clips talking about Tate.
Yeah,
So
yeah, he's guilty. I think I see you think that he's guilty for being a UAE shill and having tech teams in Israel, but if you look at the Loverboy method and also the other charges, I think the cope I'm seeing from white nationalists specifically is that he's just a product of political persecution. I don't think the Matrix is attacking somebody who's saying women can't drive. It's like
there's a mountain full, also allegedly, I don't know what I'm talking about. But as I looked into this more and I look into what the Loverboy method is, and you see his courses called PhD, the Pimping Hose degree, he's literally saying specifically, this is how you get women to do it against their will, even if they don't want to. And them bragging about beating up women who are like 15 years old. And it's like, okay, if the Matrix was just politically persecuting them, why did these charges date back to before they were even famous, right? He was kicked off of this Big Brother reality show back in like 2014, 15, before he had influence. So was the Matrix attacking him then? Were they just prepping for when he was going to be an influential guy talking about feminism? I think that there's allegedly, in my opinion, it's some really strong evidence. And also, I just think it's funny too that they did this whole campaign to deport SNEAKO, and then the next week, the the Muslim that they like because he's a shill for the UAE, that's the guy that ends up getting deported. And then Trump, who they've been doing splits and they've been begging on all four for his approval for years, he doesn't even allow them to get saved, and he's just going to allow them to be extradited to the UK. So well done, well done. All these deport SNEAKO little chud white nationalists, they ended up getting their wish for a different Muslim.
Yeah, I mean the irony is really sweet. But yeah, this is the way that things happen. You know, when you go against Allah, like you go against, like you side against the Muslims, and you are literally siding with Tommy Robinson and the people who have all this hatred and animosity for Muslims, and it's not even justified on the basis of Christianity. It's just racism or skin worshipping, as you say. Then yeah, things don't work out. Like Allah will foil your plans and show you your hypocrisy and humiliate you. And this is something that should be a warning for all believers, like all Muslims, because you never know. At any time, like the devil comes to you with a briefcase full of money and says, "Sell out Islam, sell out the Muslims, and I'll give you all the riches that you want, all the women that you want, everything that you desire in this world." People are tested all the time, but you need to reflect that the punishment might not come that moment that you accept it. It might not come that first year, the second year, but Allah is just giving you leash to hang yourself with. And this was a good friend of mine was saying, like, this is how, that's like the sunnah of Allah. Like the way that Allah works in this world is that the evildoers, Allah gives them space. Like Allah gives them, or the hypocrites, Allah gives them space to keep doing wrong things. And they have plenty of opportunity to repent, to turn back. Tate at any time could have reflected and said that, look, you know, what am I doing? Tech teams in Israel, what am I doing? Like, I'm siding with the UAE and I'm advocating for more war and destruction of Muslim countries or Venezuela. Like, I'm asking for SNEAKO to get deported, my Muslim brother. He could have like woken up at any time, but he didn't. And now he's going to crash and burn like this. Sorry, you were laughing.
He rots in jail for the rest of his life. I mean, people are saying too, oh, SNEAKO, you're pushing feminist Me Too rhetoric. Tate literally put false allegations on me and said that I tried to human traffic him 4 years ago, even though he continued to have conversations and debates for years afterwards. So if anybody's going to get on a high ground and talk about feminist Me Too false allegations, talk about the one he put on me. Talk about the situation where they all purposely said publicly that they threw me under the bus for the club situation because they wanted to save themselves. Well, look, they folded for the Jewish supremacists. They begged them for approval, and they said, here, take SNEAKO. We want to be saved. He's the bad guy, not us. And they even admitted it publicly, and they still ended up getting arrested. They still didn't get saved by Trump. So they folded. They sold out the Muslims for the Jewish supremacists, and they still got humiliated. Never will the Jews and Christians accept you until you become one of them. I just prayed for this in Mecca too, subhanAllah. I got touched back down in JFK after Elon Musk was saying deport SNEAKO. I was a little bit apprehensive in the airport. And then the first thing that the TSA agent says, the Homeland Security says, is salam alaikum. And I'm like, this really is the Islamic Republic of New Yorkistan. I'm back home, and I got right through. The Jigsaw, Laura Loomer is tagging the FBI every day. Nothing happened. Not only this, yesterday, the little Mexican midget, he's now saying, Laura Loomer, FBI, go arrest SNEAKO, go arrest SNEAKO. And we know too, in the manifesto, which you read on stream, of the San Diego terrorist, this guy was a literal groyper. His account online was Chudcell Groyper. He mentioned Nick Fuentes, Pablo, I like to call him, in the manifesto to justify why he'd be a white supremacist, even though he's Mexican. So he mentioned Pablo Fuentes and said, this is why I'm actually white, because Pablo is. And so seeing how these race worshipers always talk about their DNA, their looks maxing, this is what I look like. They'd like to be like Greek gods and have a statue like peeing into a fountain or whatever. Nick Fuentes, well, Pablo told me last year, and I wasn't going to say this for a long time because, he did say this to me in confidentiality. But when you now are saying publicly to Laura Loomer Jigsaw to go arrest me, saying that I'm a terrorist, now selling merch with my name on it, I'm going to say publicly, you told me that you're a Sephardic Jew. Pablo Fuentes, Pablocito, Nick Fuentes, is a Sephardic Jew. You don't believe me? Ask him for yourself. He told me. And I said, okay, you know what? I'll keep this private. Now that you're tagging the FBI, now that you want Laura Loomer to arrest me, let everybody know that. You're a skin worshiper. You've been coping about the fact that he's a Mexican for the longest time. Not only is he a Mexican, he's also a Jew. That's the savior of the white race. Deport SNEAKO. Now he's seeing Rabbi Mizrahi saying, oh yeah, Rabbi Mizrahi's right. Let's go kill all the Goyim. That's the guy who's going to save the white race, who wants to kill all the Goyim, this Mexican midget Jew. This is your guy. Allah is going to humiliate all the enemies of Islam, inshallah.
I mean, yeah, that's shocking. I mean, he's Jewish. It makes a lot of things add up. Like when you realize that, a lot of the statements that he's been making over the years, like one of the things that he keeps saying is that, I'm fed up with the goyim. Like he adopts that term, like he uses that term, like goyim, like to look down and condescend on others, and he includes himself with the chosen people. So maybe that's more than just rhetoric. Maybe it's because he actually is, part of the chosen tribe. So wow. It adds up.
They want to join him. I mean, this is what Clavicular said on Piers Morgan yesterday. He was asked by Piers, why don't you go to Gaza too? Because you just want to go to this war crime state. And Clavicular's like, well, I don't go there because they're losing. So they like to join the winning team. And you start to understand, for a while, I thought that Judeo-Christian values, it was all trickery, it was all brainwashing. But you come to realize, especially because so many of these people aren't Christian at all, they don't follow Jesus, they're really just skin worshipers, they're white supremacists. They look at the Jewish supremacists like, oh, we're kind of the same. They want to join the winners. It's not about anything moral. It's not about the teachings of Jesus. If the people are in charge and they control the dunya, they have all the money, you want it too. You want a piece of the pie. So naturally, people like Trump are going to sell out. You can see the British Empire selling the land immediately to the Rothschild family. The pattern has happened over and over again. And right here, you can see it with the white nationalist movement. Peter Thiel, he ate them up in about 6 months. It turned from a movement that seemed like we could be allies with them to somebody and people that are just completely subverted by the Jal agenda.
So you're just breaking this news to the world, I guess. Nick Fuentes is Jewish. It's ironic because he is attacking Dan Bilzerian for some DNA test results and saying, oh, Dan Bilzerian is actually a Jewish. He's Dan Chazarian or whatever. But actually, Nick Fuentes is more Jewish than Dan Bilzerian is, I guess.
Yep.
So that's interesting. But when I first had an indication that maybe Nick Fuentes has certain lineage in that direction, when he was mocking Yahya Sinwar. Yahya Sinwar had been killed by the IDF with that, heroic sacrifice, fighting to the last breath. And the whole world, all of us goyim, like we realized that is, what we saw for what it was, heroism, a martyr to the last breath. And who was mocking that? Who are the people who were so blind to the heroism and were just making jokes? It was the Israelis, it was the Zionists, and it was Nick Fuentes. And I pointed out the irony is like, aren't you Christian? Like, don't you understand the value of self-sacrifice? Like, don't you believe that Jesus sacrificed himself? Like, he's God and he's sacrificing himself somehow. But that's your whole belief system, and you can't value Yahya Sinwar, or any of the Palestinians who sacrificed their lives for a higher cause, like for their religion, for their people. You don't get that, and clearly he didn't. Like clearly he was rubbing his hands together and laughing at Yahya Sinwar along with the Zionists. Like that's if he was not genetically Jewish, then that seems spiritually Jewish to me, at least.
Very spiritually Jewish. The people that can't understand fighting until the last breath, never allowing humiliation, being martyred and getting the highest ranks. I mean, because their guy who's there, Yahya Sinwar, a guy who at the end of the war in 1945 is in a bunker and goes out like this, like a little coward. Instead of going out like Yahya Sinwar, Shahi drone to the last sticks, rocks until the last final breath. Their guy is someone who went out the coward's way and alone in a bunker in Berlin as the Russians came in and ended their empire. That's the difference.
Yeah, it's a big difference. Big difference. So, yeah, okay. Well, glad
Hey,
that
it's
you
good
shared
to
that.
talk to you. I just wanted I thought you would find that pretty interesting, and it's just interesting to see how this has played out. And their movement's over. It's like I don't know what you think, but I think there was a time where we had some ally. We were able to ally with these people, you know, and it seemed like there was a real movement. But I've just come to realize that they, especially they've been fully mask off recently about it. Even Pablo, for example, he said he doesn't actually think that the genocide is wrong. Pablo just wants to be Israel for America. He doesn't think that killing children is bad. It's that America should be the ones kicking the butt. He doesn't hate Israel. They don't despise Israel. They're jealous of them. They envy them. So this is not somebody that we can ally with, and this is nothing. There's nothing in common here. The difference between us and them is that we see this as wrong. It's a moral. This is a moral issue, not something that we want to recreate. And I love your work, man. I appreciate the stuff
Well,
you're doing.
before you
Daniel.
go, though, I want to ask you about the Andrew Tate stuff a little bit more, if you have
Yeah,
time.
sure.
I don't want to keep you, but like my perspective on the Andrew Tate stuff and the Me Too stuff, like I said that 'cause I had a whole debate with Destiny. I don't know if you saw it. This was like several years ago, but I
I
was
mean, I believed it
defending.
too. I believed he was innocent back then as well. But I mean, I've looked into it more. There's good pages
Well,
like
my
Milk.
my argument wasn't that he was innocent. Like it's obviously a sin. It's despicable behavior to be a pimp and to have like these websites, etc. It's despicable, but like, is it strictly illegal according to the degenerate standards of the West? And it's not. Like what Andrew Tate did is not different than what any of these like rabbis who own Pornhub or these rabbis who own OnlyFans. Like it's the same degeneracy. Like it's
Yeah.
just legal according to their standards, but they selectively apply the law on this very amorphous concept or vague concept of consent. So imagine, like, you're a prostitute who has voluntarily prostituted herself. Like, you've flown to Romania, you've gone and lived in this mansion with no.
It wasn't.
With
I mean,
Andrew
if you
Tate?
look into it, allegedly, not all of it was voluntary. There's videos of them saying like doing it against their will. And what I didn't know,
How can you do it against their will? Like, did Andrew
because I
Tate
mean,
like
if you look into the idea,
handcuff them?
pimping is the lover boy method is is tricking a girl and saying, hey, we're going to be in a relationship, we are going to get married, and then you end up prostituting her instead. Like the lover boy method, tricking a girl into that does fall into human trafficking in some areas of the world, allegedly, in my opinion. Not everywhere, but this is pimping and this stuff. It's like a street
But
pimping.
it's
But
like a
just online.
feminist law. Like, it's a feminist idea, though. Like, it's basically women who are they made a choice, right? They made a choice, and if it was on false pretenses, like, so what? Like, that's something that women do things on false pretenses for all the time, for the purpose of money, for the
There's some videos
purpose
where
of
it's
fame,
like,
for the purpose of their own benefit.
there's some
Like,
videos
that's
where Andrew and Tristan will literally say like, this is how you get them to do it when they don't want to do it. It's like, this is how you keep them when they try to leave. And Tristan will be like, when she tried to leave, I went there and smashed up the room. And so if there's a threat of violence, if they are fearing leaving, because this is if they're mentally trapped. I mean, saying it's feminist is like, sometimes they'll continue to be prostitutes under fear. If they stop, then they will get hurt and they'll get attacked. Right. This is keeping somebody against their will. Like,
that's the nature of being a prostitute. Like, look, it's something that's the nature of going into that line of work, right? That's like you want to be like I don't know, you want to be a casino owner and you want to benefit off of people gambling, but you don't want to get involved with like the potential criminal underworld that entails, or like in Las Vegas, or you don't want to get involved in the dirty side of it. But that's like being a prostitute. Like, that's what it's all about. Like, the bigger problem is like female empowerment, right? Because these women are constantly advocating, like, even the concept of grooming is a feminist concept, right? When we're talking about grooming gangs, because think about it. Like, these women, the feminist system, it's the women and the simps. They want women to be empowered. Oh, you can make your own choices. You can sleep with whoever you want. As a grade schooler, right? You have to be empowered to be able to sleep with whoever you want, even if you're in like middle school, because that's experience, as long as there's a suitable age gap. But you can be promiscuous. You can be a lesbian. It's fine. It's all fine according to the degenerate West, and it's legal, okay, because that's the age of consent. It just can't be with an older guy. They want to be empowered, but they don't want the consequences of that behavior. They don't want the consequences of, okay, you're going to be you potentially taken advantage of. But that's part and parcel of wanting to be freer and wanting to be able to make your own choices, wanting to be empowered. Like those
Yeah, I
things
mean,
go
there's also
hand in
other
hand.
charges. They just added other charges. They are charges of possessing indecent child abuse images, allegedly. This stuff is like, yeah, I understand the argument here about feminism, but like having child abuse images, and then even if say they were doing it to girls who were like 15 when they were 23, and there are also charges of rape. I don't know if you've seen Lauren Southern publicly say that
Oh, come on,
she was
bro. That's nonsense. Like, oh
some
yeah,
of the stuff.
I went to his hotel, a hotel room, and then I did it. I did things that wasn't 100% fully on
And
board
then,
with.
but you
Like,
also
we're
see that
supposed to
the
believe
people that
that.
they met with, like they traveled to this one place to meet. This is allegedly too. They met with this old Frankish person, and they met with, other pornographers that were doing it with children, and it gets like extremely disgusting. And you see the videos where they say we moved to Romania because we can get away with our crimes. That's why they moved there. They said Romania is a place where I have connections with the mafia, and the government is not going to prosecute me for being a criminal. And you're like, okay, well, like, there we go. And then obviously they have cases in Romania, and they have a lot of the UK cases are mostly great, but Romania, it's the trafficking. There's trafficking and rape and child abuse in the UK. So you're like, is all this is this all a Matrix attack? Or, but again, this is allegedly, in my
Yeah.
opinion.
Well, what do you think that they are now like extraditing him? Like, what turned the switch? Because clearly they were letting him off like he was in the U.S. and featured on all these mainstream channels and podcasts. Like, what made them decide, okay, party's over, we're going to extradite you, and these charges are going to stick? Like, what changed?
I think it was seeing their outfit. I think the purple shirt was like, you got to get deported, bro. What are you wearing? The other one in the casino, he had this flower, like see-through
Oh yeah.
shirt. He said, hey, you got to go to jail. Like, I'll lock him up. That's enough. Even if you think it's a Matrix attack, I think everybody can agree they deserve to go to jail for those terrible outfits. And I think that I saw a court video. There was a sketch. They were asking them, are you guilty? And Andrew Tate, he went, SNEAKO did it. Immediate. Can you believe that? They tried to rat on me for these whole
Wow.
charges. Unreal. But Daniel, I got to get going, man. It's good to
Okay.
catch up with you, bro. Keep up the good work. I appreciate. Salam alaikum, man, and everybody in the chat.
Thanks
Peace.
for joining. Okay. SNEAKO gone as fast as he came on. But alhamdulillah. Good to talk to SNEAKO. Always a good perspective. Yeah, so I mean, I'm sympathetic to the idea that they broke some kind of law. I'm sure that they'll find something to charge them with and to convict them with, but I don't know like why they decided all of a sudden, because as SNEAKO pointed out, the Tates have been glazing Trump. They've been like rubbing elbows with Tommy Robinson. They've been supporting this kind of populist narrative of deport the Muslims. The Muslims are groomers. The Muslims are molesting your girls and they're molesting your children. Like, he's pushed that Zionist line. Like, that serves the Zionist case, does it not? To increase animosity towards Muslims, to generate more support for wars against Iran and wars in the Middle East. Tate has been a willing proponent of those narratives. So why now? Why pull the plug now? And maybe it has to do with his outfit. He's wearing blouses. And it's funny, like Tate will wear that kind of clothes, and you have white nationalists like this Jewish Mexican Nick Fuentes attacking SNEAKO for a thobe and saying, oh, SNEAKO is wearing a dress when he's wearing a thobe. What do you think Jesus wore, by the way? You think Jesus wore a suit and tie? But ragging on SNEAKO for his thobe, his Muslim garb, but then your best buddy and your hero Andrew Tate is wearing blouses and capri pants. So anyway, yeah. So why did they pull the plug? Why did they turn the switch? Now Tate is in jail, and we'll see what happens. But yeah, that's the latest development. I didn't expect SNEAKO to come on. Good thing that I checked the chat when I did, because I didn't know that he was watching. But and I didn't expect him to break the news about Nick Fuentes. So I mean, maybe that's something worth talking about as well, with Nick being outed as having, you know, some of that tribe in his DNA. It explains a lot, and it's unfortunate. Like, it's unfortunate that you have someone, you know, yeah, you can have Jewish lineage. I mean, this is what I was arguing also on Twitter, is that it seems like the Jewish population is severely undercounted. And I was sharing that actually, according to Jewish authorities, it's not allowed. Like, it's haram in Judaism to count the Jewish population. You're not allowed to do it in Judaism. So, you know, I think that because they claim only 15 or 16 million in the world, yet, you know, everyone has some kind of Jewish lineage. Are you not noticing this? Like Dan Bilzerian, now Nick Fuentes, being, you know, quarter or half, I don't know. Like, he is significantly has some of that lineage as well. So how can it only be 16 million? Like, that these 16 million are getting around. They're getting around. They're like mixing with everyone. So, and you know, there's nothing wrong with having Jewish lineage in and of itself, but for people who are skin worshippers, for people who are white nationalists and genealogy is everything, DNA is destiny, according to these people, then yeah, it is significant. If you're 25%, 30%, 15% Jewish, yeah, I guess that means a lot for those kinds of people. For Muslims, you know, no, it doesn't matter what your lineage is, who your parents are. What matters is your piety and your devotion to Allah. That's what matters. But yeah, this is their standard, and it's biting them in the rear. So anyway, that was very exciting and fun. Hope you enjoyed it. Anything can happen on Haqiqatjou. Anything can happen. Breaking news about these white nationalists being part of the tribe. But yeah, with Nick Fuentes is a shame. You know, he had, like, I think his peak was that Pierce Morgan interview. That was his peak. You know, he did a great job against Pierce Morgan, but ever since then, it's just been on a negative trajectory. And I think they might have just gotten to him. Like, I think that maybe after Charlie Kirk's assassination, like, maybe that is one of the potential reasons that Charlie Kirk was assassinated. Like, I stick to my theory. The theory that I had on day one is that the Zionists took out Charlie Kirk. It wasn't Tyler Robinson. It wasn't, you know, some gay shooter who was driven to rage because Charlie Kirk made fun of his transgender boyfriend or girlfriend. Like, that's the FBI's narrative on Charlie Kirk. Okay, this guy, Tyler Robinson, climbed onto the roof with this rifle, and then he disassembled it, then he reassembled it and threw it in the woods, and then he ran away and he jumped off the roof, and there's no video footage, like clear footage of him in any of it. It's all this blurry camera footage. Like, security cameras are now high definition. You know that, right? Like, you can have 4K. Like, the standard that they install in universities is at least 2K. 2K or 4K resolution. And yet you don't have a clear shot of this gunman that you can release to the public. It's all just blurry images that are used, blurry camera footage. So I don't believe the FBI's narrative. I think that, yeah, he was taking out Charlie Kirk. And the newest theory is that it was actually his microphone, like his Rode mic that he was using. There were charges in that. And that, if you look at the video footage back, you can see that the shock wave of something on his chest reverberates until it hits his neck. And that seems like a more plausible theory than this rifle round going through his neck and not like exiting out the back. Like, so, and we know that Israel obviously is known, has made itself known for rigging electronics with explosives. We saw what they did with pagers in Lebanon. So anyway, I think that Charlie Kirk was taken out, and maybe part of it was to get something on Nick Fuentes and the Groypers and basically say that, hey, you better play ball. Okay, we're not going to ask you to completely reverse your position, like completely reverse your views on Zionism, but you need to move it in a different direction. You need to moderate. Otherwise, we're going to put you in prison. Like, we're going to put you in prison. We're going to shut you down, but also we're going to bring legal charges. Because Nick Fuentes, the person who was the hardest on Charlie Kirk was Nick Fuentes. The person who was most aggressive, and it verged on violence, like advocating violence in the same way that he talks about SNEAKO now, and incites his followers to commit violence against SNEAKO. Like, it was the same level, okay, at least as bad, if not worse, against Charlie Kirk. And the Groypers were going to Charlie Kirk's events, and they're harassing the Charlie Kirk and whatever speakers at those Turning Point USA events. And so it would have been very easy to make the case that, hey, Tyler Robinson here, he's actually a Groyper. Tyler Robinson is a Groyper, and you're finished, basically. That they could have gone and neutralized Nick Fuentes in that way. And when we've seen the trajectory since that point, since Charlie Kirk's assassination with the Groypers and with Nick Fuentes, it's very fishy. Like, he's reversed so many of his positions. He's reversed his position on Russia. He's reversed his position on intervention in the Middle East. He says that he's fine with intervention in the Middle East as long as it's for the U.S.'s interests as opposed to Israel's. So basically, like SNEAKO was mentioning, just do the same kind of neocon approach, except, less overtly for Zionism, basically. He's like a less overt Zionist at this point, or neocon at this point. Anyway, so yeah, it's a shame, but there seems to be something else going on in the background. And the fact that, remember the San Diego mosque shooters that killed a security guard and wounded some Muslims at that masjid in San Diego? Like, the manifesto from the shooters was mentioning Nick Fuentes. They're identifying as Groypers. So usually, like that kind of paper trail, basically, that's the end. Like, you'll get under severe legal scrutiny, and forget about social media. Forget about having any presence on social media. If they want to really pull the plug, the authorities easily can go to these social media platforms like Rumble, like X, Twitter X, and these are the places that Nick Fuentes is on, saying that, hey, look, this person on your platform is inciting violence, and it has actually led to terrorism. It has actually led to these people being killed. And so we have you're legally liable, okay, and perhaps criminally liable for allowing this person to be platformed. You have to shut it down. That's what the authorities can easily do if they wanted to against Fuentes, but they don't. Why not? Like, why why are you just letting him stay on these platforms? And now with SNEAKO, like, you're literally inciting violence against him. Anyways, these are just questions I have. So I'm not saying that there's indisputable proof that he is a Fed or he's compromised, but there's a lot of these red flags and question marks. So yeah, we can't have any real allies, unfortunately, as Muslims. That's the problem. We can't have any real allies. And you try to ally with these Christians, and you show them good faith, you show them respect, you show them, this kind of congeniality, and then they stab you in the back. They start mocking your religion. We don't mock their religion. We only respond. Like, when they start attacking the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, they start saying bad words about Islam as a religion, then we'll respond. Then we'll put you in your place, and we'll talk about your cuck religion. But we don't want to do that. We want to just be neighborly. That's what Muslims want. We want to be neighborly. We want to have alliances. We want to try to face the bigger threats, the bigger problems. But as I've mentioned before on the stream, you have to have a certain level of IQ to accept that kind of alliance. And you have to have a certain level of gentlemanly understanding, good faith. And it's something that eludes the Christians, eludes the Christian mind, eludes the Christian spirit. And you get the situation where the Christians turn around and they want to deport you. They want to amplify your biggest enemies. They want to throw you under the bus. They want to insult the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Okay, you want to play it like that? We can play it like that. They want to talk about, oh, the next crusade. Like, oh, we're going to have a next crusade. And I share the meme, like, the meme where it's like, oh, you want to start another crusade? Like, literally, all the crusades except the first one ended up in defeat of the Christians. Like, the Muslims were just curb stomping every single crusade except the first one. You want to start another crusade? Like, okay, you want to repeat the pattern? Go ahead. Iran is doing it right now. Iran is doing it. And that's what we will transition to. Let me just see if I had any other points that I want to share with you. Yeah, this is what another SNEAKO clip that I wanted to share, and I think it's good to share this because it's funny.
This is why the Matrix. Who was that guy earlier? Myron and Riyadh are right. It's a political attack. Is this what the Matrix fears? Yeah. The Matrix can't stand this. The Matrix can't stand this. They had to get it. This is just too base. The aura. Oh my God, bro. The aura. It's too powerful. It's too. Oh my God, it's too powerful. The Matrix, stop him. Stop him.
Made his way into the Knicks fan base like a snake.
Oh, look at the
Stop
watches.
him. Stop him.
Oh, a stack
Okay,
of money.
This is why the Matrix.
Do you see that? Oh, a stack of... First of all, who does shoulder presses, okay, on a couch? Who does shoulder presses on a couch like that? And, like, what kind of weight is that? Like, this is girl weight, bro. Like, what kind of shoulder press? What kind of workout is this? Like, you're not gaining anything by pressing such light weight for, like, 5 reps or 2 reps.
The Matrix fears.
Like, what is this? What is this? 1,
The Matrix
2,
can't stand
3. Not full range of motion, by the way. So you're not hitting, you know, all heads of the deck
Yes.
properly. Yeah, 3 reps. 3 reps and then drop it on your white couch. Like, what? Okay, so this is so cringe, bro. And then you go and look at the... Okay, you're smoking your hookah, drinking your Turkish coffee or whatever with the dumbbells, with the light weight on the pillow, on the throw pillow. And then sitting like this, spread eagle on the couch, looking at the laptop. And then like, what is... And then what's on the table is, oh, look, close up of the stacks of cash. I don't know what currency is. I don't think... Is that dollars? That USD? And then, oh, look at the watches. Yeah, oh, the aura. The aura. This is what the Matrix fears, is this kind of content from Andrew Tate. So yeah, what is he adding? Like, what was Andrew Tate really adding? Dawa, like, this is not Dawa. This is not like, this is not contributing. Like, that's where I draw the line. Like, when it comes to these influencers, like, when it comes to any given influencer that converts, like, I recognize that it takes time to change your life and to actually bring your life in accordance with the Sharia and what Allah wants, okay? And sometimes that's a lifelong process. For born Muslims, it's a lifelong process to bring your life and the decisions that you make in line with the Sharia, giving up the haram, okay, and living by the halal. It's a lifelong process, even for born Muslims, let alone someone who's coming from a completely haram, degenerate lifestyle with that kind of history that Tate has had, or even that SNEAKO has had, and then becoming a practicing Muslim. Like, that takes time, okay? So we have to have grace, we have to have patience. But it's not like you can just continue to live that kind of lifestyle, get all the benefits of branding yourself as a Muslim, get all that Muslim support, and then do nothing to change your image. So when it comes to, like, if you compare someone like Tate versus SNEAKO, okay, SNEAKO has this change that he's made. He does try to live by Islam. And if privately, in his personal life, he doesn't meet everything 100%, at least he doesn't reveal his sins. At least he doesn't like perpetuate it or glorify it or sugarcoat it to present that to the youth who will follow him, who will actually be influenced by him. He has that sense of responsibility and that sense of commitment to Islam. And that's something that Andrew Tate doesn't have. Another person who doesn't have it, by the way, Lily J. Okay, that was another controversy that I didn't. I said a couple of things briefly online. The whole charity scam allegations against Lily J. But even beyond like the charity scam allegations against Lily J, in terms of her actual dawah online, like she doesn't take the personal responsibility to like, hey, maybe wear a hijab, like actually try to be modest. Like, can you move in that direction? No, like she doesn't even make that kind of effort. So like, why should the Muslims be devoted to you? Why should the Muslims like support you? So that's point number one. Point number two, like you're making an effort and you side with the Muslims. When there's a conflict, when it's Muslims versus non-Muslims, like the situation now with Israel, with Zionists taking over different political parties, making the Zionists operating these right-wing golems basically to be their agents to incite hatred against Muslims. Like, you don't side with them. You don't side with the Tommy Robinsons, the Laura Loomers, the Randy Fines, the Netanyahus. You don't side with them. You side with the Muslims. And Andrew Tate doesn't do that. Andrew Tate sides with the Tommy Robinsons, the Fuenteses, these enemies. Okay? So that's a big betrayal. That's a betrayal of the Ummah, and that means a lot. And that's a part of Islam. Al-wala wal-bara. Wala wal-bara means what? It means loyalty, okay? Having the loyalty towards Islam, towards the Muslims, and then bara means disavow. You disavow the enemies of Islam. When there are people who are attacking Islam, you're opposed to them. You're opposed to them. You don't associate with them. You don't support them. You don't amplify them. It's a very important part of Iman. Like your Iman as a believer is tied to wala wal bara. And this is why the Quran is often, why Allah in the Quran is often mentioning this concept. Okay, and so you can have a sinful Muslim. Okay, we're all sinful Muslims, by the way. You can have a sinful Muslim, but his heart is still with the believers. His heart is with the believers. His heart is with Islam. He supports them. And for that reason, that's something that Allah will accept, inshallah. And he's going to be in, the paradise with the shuhada. He's going to be in paradise with the salihin because of his love for the salihin, his love for the shuhada, his love for Islam, his wala, his loyalty to Islam. Okay, never doubt the power and the weight of loyalty to Islam and the disavowal, the bara, from the enemies of Islam, because this is something that will have massive weight for you in the akhirah. And this is more critical, actually. This is more critical. I've said this on previous streams, than making sure that you have the 100% right aqidah. Okay, the way that the Wahhabis define aqidah, by the way, that you need to go and study the depths of these theological distinguishing creedal doctrines when it comes to the sifat, when it comes to any number of issues in what they consider necessary aqidah. No, 99% of Muslims, they've never studied this. They don't understand it. They wouldn't be able to understand it if it were presented to them. And it's not necessary to be saved and to enter the paradise and to be a Muslim and to have Iman. Rather, what's more important is actually being loyal to the believers, being loyal to Islam. Like that is more important than whether if you know, like you do ta'wil or you do ithbat or you do tafweed of, the yad of Allah, the hand of Allah. It's more important, actually. It's more important to be loyal. That's why the Quran specifically mentions the importance of al-wala wal-bara. Doesn't mention the importance of tafweed versus ta'wil versus ithbat, actually. That's not mentioned in the Quran. I'll have you know. Or hadith. Anyway, that's the difference between Wahhabi Aqidah and the Wahhabi understanding of Iman is just the deviance, a distortion, as opposed to true Islam. That's why, according to Wahhabism, it's fine to ally with the Jews and the Christians against Muslims, against the Palestinians, against Iran, against Lebanon, against the Yemen Ansar Allah. It's actually better, according to Wahhabis, to side with the Jews and the Christians than to side with these other groups or the Palestinians, because the Palestinians, they don't have the correct Aqidah. They don't have the correct Aqidah. They are Ash'ari, or they're Ikhwani, or they're this label or that label. This is the importance of al-wala wal-bara. Anyway, this is another clip that I wanted to share with you. Now we're just going to talk more about the war with Iran. Watch this. This was going viral. It's just shocking. This is Smotrich, the finance minister of Israel.
למדינת ישראל אין אינטרס להצטרף למערכה. המצב הנוכחי שבה יש מערכה מתוחמת בין איראן לארצות הברית הוא הנכון והטוב ביותר לנו. צריך לזכור שמטרת העל שלנו במערכה.
So he's saying that we don't have any interest as Israel to join the campaign against Iran. We don't have any interest in joining the U.S. against Iran. We're going to stay out of it. And that's in our best interest. Imagine the chutzpah. Imagine the chutzpah of these people, okay, with their ugly Hebrew language.
וזה לאו דווקא משותף עם ארצות הברית. זה לערער, להחליש עד כדי הפלת המשטר. אנחנו לא יודעים כרגע למדינת ישראל אין...
So our goal, we just want Iran to collapse, but we're going to let the U.S. do all the dirty work. This is the best situation for us. This is the best situation. And there's a certain, like, Israeli expression that they have that sweet or tasty is the fish from your neighbor's plate. Tasty is the fish from your neighbor's plate. Okay? You reach over and you very secretly, surreptitiously take the fish off your neighbor's plate while he's not noticing. It's tasty, it has an extra deliciousness, okay? Yeah, it's nice, and we welcome Iran to be destroyed and for Iran to have millions of lives lost in a war, even a nuclear war. That's nice, but it's even nicer if someone else does it for us and we don't have to lift a finger. That's even nicer. That's even tastier. Okay, this is the Israeli mindset. And this is Smotrich. So imagine the chutzpah. And imagine if you're an American having to listen to this, having to listen to the Israeli finance minister basically say that, yeah, you guys can die for us. Yeah, go ahead. Go ahead, American troops. Go ahead, American youth. Go and die in Iran. Go ahead, get out the scary mullahs. Make sure they never get a nuclear weapon. Okay, go ahead and fight in the Middle East. Go into the desert and fight for us. We'll just sit back. It's summer, and we want to enjoy our summer vacations. That's literally what they said. Because what happened was, okay, this is also part of the news, is that Ben Gurion Airport, International Airport in Tel Aviv, was not allowing U.S. military planes to land in their airport. Okay, they have a certain quota. They have a certain quota of military planes from the U.S. that are allowed to be stationed in their airport. And they said, look, we have summer vacation right now. A lot of Israelis are trying to enjoy their summer vacation. They're flying out of our Ben Gurion International Airport. So we don't want to delay flights by allowing U.S. military planes to land. I know you need those planes, especially the tankers, the refueling tankers for your operations against Iran in this war for us, but you're not going to delay our vacations, okay? You're not going to delay the vacation. So can't land your military jets at our airport. That's literally the explanation that they gave to deny the US jets from landing or being stationed at their airport. Imagine imagine the entitlement. Imagine, like, you know, when this idea of the goyim, the cattle, the goy cattle, like, it's not a meme. Like, that's what they actually believe. Like, they actually believe the United States is their cattle slaves, and their lives are absolutely worthless, meaningless. The whole purpose of anyone existing, any non-Jew existing, is to serve the chosen people. Like, that's why God created non-Jews. God created the Gentiles to serve the chosen people in any way. Okay? If your entire life was to be like a doormat for a chosen person to come and wipe his feet on your face as he enters his home, like, your whole existence is just being a doormat. Your face is literally there while a, you know, this kosher boot wipes its feet on your face, and that's all you did for 100 years lying there. Okay, that's a purpose well spent. That's an existence well spent. Like, that was your purpose. God made you for that, to be a doormat, to wipe the kosher boots of a chosen person. That is literally their conception. And it's not just, it's the origins of it is religious. The origins of it is the Torah, is the Bible. That is the origins of it. Okay, because that's what the Bible says. That's what Genesis says, that you are the chosen of God. And that's how they interpret it. But it's also in their culture. It's also in their larger cultural consciousness. And so it comes out. Like, it comes out, it manifests and expresses itself in these, you know, with these government officials there in Israel. So yeah, we're not going to allow you to use our base or our airport. Okay, so I also want to talk about this Iran war just more generally, because it's ramping up. And obviously there is the memorandum of understanding between Iran. It was supposed to be 60 days. It was between Iran and the US, and it was signed by Trump. It was signed by Ghalibaf, who was the speaker of the Mejlis, the head of the Mejlis, which is the legislature in Iran, as well as the president, Pezeshkian, and whoever else. And when it came out, I said that, look, I don't really see the wisdom of this, and I explained why. This memorandum of understanding, it's not going to be worth the paper it's written on, because the U.S. is not going to abide by it. The U.S. is not going to abide by this understanding. They're just going to use this to ease some of the economic pressure by opening up the Strait of Hormuz, even if temporarily, so that they can prevent the market from going into hypershock when the oil reserves run out globally. And even in the U.S., like the reserves that the U.S. has of oil, they have been diminishing and they're approaching critical levels. And so this is a temporary maneuver just to buy the U.S. more time to maybe restock some of their ammunition and to restart the war eventually, maybe after the midterm elections in November or at some other point later in the summer. I was not a fan of the MOU, but I said that, look, if the U.S. does abide by this and the U.S. does unfreeze some of Iran's assets, the U.S. refuses to sanction Iran on the international market, eases some of those sanctions on Iran, eases some of the pressure by removing forces from some of these military bases in the Middle East. That was part of the MOU. Okay, then that would be a win. That would be a win against Iran. Yeah, it would be a lost opportunity to really solve some of the larger problems in the Middle East by creating such a deterrent. Like, if you just keep the pressure on with the Strait, you trigger an economic collapse globally, then that will be such a strong deterrent that you kind of solve the U.S. aggression in the Middle East problem. Like, you're on your way to permanently solving that, and this MOU releases the pressure and it prevents that. So yeah, that's a lost opportunity, but maybe it's a short-term win for Iran. That was my perspective. It was like hesitant optimism. But as predicted, the U.S. did not abide by the MOU. They did not unfreeze the assets. they started to bomb again. They started to bomb Iran again. They were, instead of removing forces from their bases in Bahrain or Qatar or Kuwait, they're actually rearming those bases and increasing personnel, increasing some of the these refueling tankers. And so, okay, this is going contrary to the MOU. The U.S. is violating the MOU. The big violation was that part of the MOU, Israel was supposed to leave southern Lebanon. They did not do that either. They did not do that either. They continued to occupy southern Lebanon, and they continue even to bomb Beirut. So the U.S. was not abiding by any part of the MOU. And so it basically collapsed. And then finally, after, since the week before last, Iran once again closed the strait, and now Iran has gone on the offensive. Iran is now bombing, heavily bombing, not only Kuwait, not only Bahrain, but now increasingly bombing Jordan. Some of these bases in Jordan, and even on the border of Syria and Jordan, some of these barracks housing U.S. troops, now they're being bombed as well. And there's increasing casualties of U.S. soldiers. And some of their images, like 19-year-old U.S. soldier, okay, killed in Jordan, in these bases. In Kuwait, a lot of casualties in Kuwait. And so this is, Iran is now ramping up. They once again closed the strait, and there seems like things are moving full steam ahead with this aggressive posture. And it doesn't seem like the U.S. has an answer to this. It doesn't seem that like U.S. has an answer. It looks like U.S. was hoping that Iran wouldn't retaliate, that Iran wouldn't be aggressive, that Iran would kind of take that strategic patience approach that they had in the past prior to this year. But there's a new boss in town, okay? It seems like with the killing, assassination of Ayatollah Khamenei, his son Mojtaba is in power now, and it looks like him and the IRGC, they're no longer pulling any punches. They're going to be very aggressive. They have been very aggressive against these forward bases in the Gulf. And so people ask, like, what's the strategy? And there's some complaints as well. Some complaints that why is Iran escalating and striking these Gulf countries instead of targeting Israel? Like, isn't Israel the problem? Like, isn't that the head of the snake? Like, why don't you go for the head of the snake instead of punishing these Gulf countries? Especially now that Iran has targeted civilian infrastructure. Because what has happened is that in response to the U.S. striking some of the power plants in Iran, striking some of the bridges in Iran, civilian infrastructure in Iran, and even getting close to striking some of the nuclear power plants in Iran, civilian power plants, okay? And potentially causing, if those strikes are too close to the reactor core, causing a kind of meltdown that leaks radiation and irradiates large segments of Iranian territory, causing a massive civilian crisis. Okay, not only for Iranians, but also for the entire region. So Iran is giving these warning shots. Like, if the U.S. continues to strike our civilian infrastructure, guess what? We're going to go for the Gulf infrastructure. We're going to hit Kuwait, and they hit desalinization plants, multiple strikes in Kuwait, and the power grid, power plants being struck. And this is a kind of existential crisis for these Gulf states because they're so reliant on desalinization, like taking seawater, taking out the salt and making it potable, making it into fresh water for the population of those countries. And if Iran starts taking those out, there's no more water. There has to be mass migration from these countries. It would be a international crisis, refugee crisis, if Iran decides to press the button. And so this is the ultimatum that's been given to the United States. How crazy do you want to go? And the U.S. is not used to this situation. The U.S. is not used to an adversary who has the power to inflict this level of damage and this level of harm. This is unprecedented for the United States since basically World War II. At no point did the U.S., I mean, unless you want to include the Cold War with the Soviet Union, but that was a Cold War. But in terms of hot war, in terms of an active conflict, there's been no conflict where the adversary, since World War II, of the United States has had the potential to cause this much damage and this much harm without the use of any kind of nuclear weapon. So this is, I think, spooked the United States. And it seems like their military top brass, including Pete Hegseth, like they just don't know what to do. Their usual solution has been to just bomb their way out of any problem. Just bomb the opponent into submission. But the problem is when the opponent has the ability to bomb you back. Has the ability to bomb you back and to take out some of your allies. And cripple some of your allies and to cause massive humanitarian damage to your allies, and that becomes something intolerable. So this is the U.S. They're stuck between a rock and a hard place. The hard place is the potential for Iran to take out the civilian infrastructure in the Gulf, and also, by the way, Iran, the RIGC has threatened to start targeting the royal officials, like the royal administrators, the royal monarchs in these countries as well. Like, okay, you assassinated our leader. Now your leaders are in danger as well. They're legitimate targets for us as well. So just push us. See what's going to happen. Okay? It's like a game of chicken. Okay? Let's see who's going to flinch first. And so that's the hard place. The rock is the Israeli lobby. The rock is the Zionists and Netanyahu pushing for more and more escalation, because just like Smotrich explained, like, this is what we want. Well, we don't care if the United States, we don't care how many US troops get liquidated. We don't care about the economic collapse of the entire globe, let alone the United States. We don't care about the death and destruction that is going to be caused, as long as we get what we want, which is the elimination of Iran as a threat to us regionally. Okay? The United States, Donald Trump, you're just like that doormat. We just want to wipe our feet on you. That's all you're good for. That's your purpose. Like, the teleology of the Goy cattle, of the Gentiles, is to just be used for our benefit or for our convenience, whatever the case may be. So why doesn't Iran, like, going back to this question, why doesn't Iran just go for the head of the snake? Clearly they have the method, the means to strike. They did it earlier this year, obviously, and last year as well. Operation True Promise 1 through 1,000. And they can do it again, especially now that the interceptor stockpile has been diminished. The THAAD missile interceptors have been greatly diminished. There's not really an ability for the U.S. to replenish those stockpiles. They're running dangerously low. Obviously, the interceptors in the Gulf have been used up, and now Iran is exploiting that, because what Iran can do, and it seems like this was their strategy, they used up all the older munitions, the older ballistic missiles that might be 10 years older or older. They used those to take up the interceptor stockpiles to low levels, because all these Patriot missiles were used in Bahrain, in Kuwait, in Jordan. They got used up taking out these older ballistic missiles that Iran was lobbing, okay, from last year and earlier this year. Now that their Patriot missile batteries have been all exhausted, now Iran is using some of their more advanced hypersonics with pinpoint precision, like within a 10 or 20 meter precision strike target. So this is what Iran is now employing, and they're taking out what are their targets. So what was really targeted earlier in the year in their initial waves was taking out the long-range radar systems. Like these radar systems that were being used as a shield for Israel, mainly, but also for some of these US bases. So Iran first took out those radar systems so that you no longer have an early detection system to prepare against these ballistic missile launches from Iran. But now Iran, in these latest strikes, they're hitting fuel storage. they're hitting any kind of tanker hangars, like the hangars for these refueling tanker planes. Those are getting hit. Barracks are getting hit, where soldiers are being housed. These are getting hit. That's what's causing casualties. Okay, so this has been a shift in the strategy of what Iran is targeting. And Halal Zoomer, our bro Halal Zoomer, which you may know from Twitter, X, sent me an article called Debasification. And it's talking about the strategy that Iran has. And it's saying that this article is arguing that there is two major asymmetries that the U.S. is dealing with Iran. The first major asymmetry is when it comes to casualties, because this war is very unpopular in the United States. And even amongst Republicans do not support this war against Iran. The public is against it, especially given the worsening economic situation in the States and globally. So I keep saying civilian casualties. Military casualties are going to go against the perception that this is a temporary, quick, one-and-done military conflict, not a forever war. This is just something very simple. The U.S. is just going to spend a limited amount of time bombing Iran, and then it's over. Okay, that's what Trump wants to sell to the United States. That's been his message. That's why he keeps saying, oh, the war is over. We've decimated them. This is not like this conflict was nothing. Like he keeps messaging this to ease the minds of an anxious public that doesn't want to see another protracted war in the Middle East. So the soldiers being killed by Iranian strikes, this is a PR disaster because this threatens that entire narrative. Okay, now you have these soldiers who their pictures are being shared on social media that are being killed like 1,000 miles away from Iran. Iran is striking them with these missiles. Like, they're not protected. And so now the casualties, the bodies are stacking up. And this is causing a PR disaster for Trump. We don't have like this win in the bag. It's not going to be a temporary conflict. This is going to be protracted. The Iranians aren't going to just roll over. And no, our troops are actually in danger. So this makes it very dangerous for the U.S. to house these troops at these forward bases in the Gulf. If they're not safe in Jordan, where are they going to be safe? If they're not safe on the border of Jordan and Syria, okay, 800,000 or 800 miles, 800 to 1,000 miles from the borders of Iran, if they're not safe there, they're not going to be safe in Bahrain. They're not going to be safe in Kuwait. They're not going to be safe in Qatar. They're not going to be safe in Oman. Okay, even Oman is getting hit. They're not going to be safe in Saudi. Where are they going to be safe? They basically have to be in Israel. They have to be in Israel, and then guess what? The Israelis are saying we don't want to be involved. Even Israel doesn't want to die for Israel, right? So where are these soldiers going to be? They have to basically evacuate. They have to evacuate the Middle East. This is what Iran is doing by targeting specifically the barracks of these soldiers. That's one strategic asymmetry that Iran is trying to exploit. Because with the U.S., when the U.S. strikes Iran and takes out civilians or takes out Iranian soldiers, that only increases the resolve of Iran. That only creates a rally around the flag effect where you have Iranians in greater support of the IRGC, of Khamenei, etc. But the opposite happens with the U.S. The more soldiers are taken out by Iran, the less public support there is, the more hatred there is towards Donald Trump and the Republicans. So that's the asymmetry. That's why it's asymmetrical. The other factor is the geographic factor. Okay, because Iran, it's like a geographic and technological factor that Iran has these missile stockpiles. And this is critical that Iran has stockpiles that the U.S. does not have. The US does not have the ability to just launch non-stop missiles, ballistic missiles at Iran and take out strategic targets in a smart way. The US just doesn't have that. And this is not something that we're used to hearing. We have this perception in our mind that the US is a juggernaut, that anything that the world has, just multiply it by 10 in terms of military capability, and that's what the US has. Whatever Iran has, this like third world country in the desert, okay, this kind of stereotype, whatever these camel jockeys have, this stereotype of Iran or any Middle Eastern country, the US obviously has 100 times more powerful and in greater abundance. Like, that's the perspective. But this is completely false. This is completely false. Yes, the US has a lot of advanced weapon systems. Yes, they spend $1 trillion a year on their militaries, on research and development, advanced technologies, the cutting edge. But that doesn't mean that they have what is needed that will be efficacious long term in a long war of attrition with a particular country, in this case, Iran. And what Iran has proven is that they have structured their entire defense and they've prepared for it for decades around this possibility of a fight with the United States. And so they have focused on specifically the technologies and the stockpiles they need to be effective against one enemy, the United States, the Great Satan, as they call it, rightly. Okay, that's the asymmetry. Iran is focused on just one country, whereas the U.S. defense system, or the Department of War, is focused on any threat. China, Russia, the terrorists, the Muslim terrorists, the drug cartels, like any kind of enemy around the world. Like, that's the difficulty of being a superpower. When you want to have the entire globe in an iron grip, okay, as a superpower, and dominate every waterway, every corner of the globe with your CIA, with your intelligence, and with your military might, you have to be a generalist. You have to be a generalist, and you have to have all kinds of weapons technology. You have to spend all kinds of money in this type of plane, this type of fighter jet, this type of drone, this type of missile, this type of nuclear warhead, this type of cyber warfare technology. You have to be a generalist. So you have to spread yourself thin. Whereas Iran is focused only on one enemy. They're laser focused on that one, on beating one enemy. That's a huge asymmetry, okay, between Iran and the United States. And so Iran has stockpiled specifically the type of weapon that they need to inflict maximum damage on the US and their forward bases with these hypersonic missiles and the rest of their missile catalog, okay? Whereas the US, they have a limited number of interceptors, missile interceptors. They have a limited number of cruise missiles that they can launch, ballistic missiles that they can launch at Iran. And their stockpiles are running critically low. And so what they increasingly rely on, is what are called dumb bombs, okay? Not the smart bombs, but basically gravity bombs. Bombs that you just drop from a bomber and gravity guides it to the target, okay? They're not smart in that they can change trajectory or hit a precise target. No, the gravity just pulls it into, and it falls at free fall into, the girls' school or whatever. That's what the US increasingly has to rely on. But the problem with that is there are air defenses that Iran has. And those air defenses put your fighter jets or your bombers in harm's way. And that is a risk that increasingly you're going to see more and more US bombers and fighter jets being hit and downed. Iran has already demonstrated their capability with that, with being able to down these aircrafts. So you need to take out the air defenses. But taking out the air defenses requires you to be in Iranian airspace for prolonged periods of time. And what does that require? That requires fuel. The fighter jets need fuel to be able to remain in Iranian airspace for long enough where they can identify where the air defenses are, because they're mobile. the Iranian air defenses to be able to identify and then take them out. That requires being in Iranian airspace for a prolonged period of time, as opposed to just in and out. In, hit the target, and get out. So that requires refueling in the air. And refueling in the air requires what? Requires a tanker. And a tanker requires what? It requires an air base that is refueling, and then it goes into the skies, sometimes in Iraq, but mostly over Saudi Arabia, okay, to refuel your jets that are going to go and take out the air defenses in Iran. So you see, there's like a chain of dependence that's created because of the strategy that the U.S. needs to pursue, because of the limitations in the technology and the limitations of the stockpiles. So they depend. So this is what Iran has identified. They have identified a weak part of this chain of dependence, which are these refueling tankers. They have to be located in one of these Gulf bases in order to get the fuel. They've been bombing these bases, specifically the fuel storage tanks, and the refueling tankers themselves, the planes themselves, have been targeted, and many of them have been destroyed. And what the U.S. has had to do, just like they've been doing with their troops, is to move them further and further away from Iran. They're not safe in Bahrain. They're not safe in Kuwait. They're not safe in Qatar. They're not safe in Jordan. So Iran is just slowly pushing them further and further out. And Israel says, yeah, we don't want those tankers in our Ben Gurion airport either, in our air bases either. We don't want that. So then where can they go? They have to go to Cyprus. They have to go to the Mediterranean. They have to go to even some of them in Europe. They have to be stationed in Europe. But this defeats the purpose. If the tanker, these tanker planes are flying from Europe or flying from the Mediterranean, they're using up fuel, and that becomes increasingly strategically difficult, or logistically rather difficult, and your jets are having to refuel multiple times, and that is a logistical problem for the United States. That's why. So, and then when you realize this, okay, first of all, you realize Iran's strategy, like to basically eliminate the utility of these forward bases, push the U.S. forces out of the Gulf, and the vulnerability of the entire, because if you think about this, the power of the U.S. military is primarily its air power. The air power is what makes the U.S. military so deadly, because what the air power does is the air power is going to carpet bomb entire regions, to take out infrastructure, to take out any kind of military installation, to take out any kind of force that you have in your country, whether it's in Iraq. Okay, remember Iraq, the shock and awe campaign that they launched in 2003 against Saddam, against Baghdad. Okay, those are fighter jets. Those are fighter jets dropping bombs. You just obliterate the enemy. Or Afghanistan, okay, against the Taliban. You just obliterate, okay? And Israel uses the same strategy. Like, you use your air power to carpet bomb, to cripple, and then that's when the U.S. ground force goes in. That's when the ground invasion happens, and the ground invasion is able to be effective and to limit the amount of casualties, because the major push has already come through in the air. So when you realize that the U.S. military might is so dependent on air power, and that air power is so dependent on these jets, okay, these bombers being able to take off from close enough so that they have enough fuel to drop those bombs and to restock, their ammo to drop more bombs. When you realize that kind of dependence chain and the weakness in that dependence chain, then it really radicalizes you, okay? Why? Because you realize how complicit these Muslim countries, like these Gulf countries, have been in the subjugation and the destruction of the Middle East, and the ability for the US and Israel to subjugate the Muslims and to commit acts of massacres and genocide against the Muslims in the past 20 years, okay, 25 years, starting with Afghanistan, okay, going to Iraq, going to Libya, Yemen, Syria, Lebanon, all these countries, okay, Somalia, all of these countries have been under the boot of US air power, facilitated by who? By these Gulf countries. And the head of that snake, Saudi Arabia. Imagine, okay? And what kind of death toll are we talking about? According to Brown University, Watson Institute, 4.7 million Muslims killed by US war, the war on terror, since 2001. 4.7 million Muslims, 38 million Muslim refugees, Muslims losing their homes, losing their families, being killed, being massacred. It can only happen with the cooperation of the munafiqeen. There's no way up. There's no other conclusion that you can draw. There's no other conclusion that you can draw. They're complicit in the destruction and the oppression and the occupation. They are complicit. It can't happen without their participation, without their facilitation. In a very logical way, in a very clear logistical chain. So yeah, it's a radicalizing thought. Don't be a radical, okay? Don't say, oh, Daniel's advocating radicalism. No, I'm not saying be a radical, but let's be sober and let's be real. Let's understand the reality. Why we're in the situation we're in. We have to understand how we're going to make the situation better. So Iran has recognized this logistical asymmetry, taking advantage by the debasification. That's the term that was used in this article, this Substack article that Halal Zoomer sent me. I think that analysis matches up with what we see with the targets that Iran is choosing. They're pushing the American forces further and further away from the Gulf. And that's a win. That's great for Muslims. That's great for humanity. And the U.S. doesn't have a solution for it. Doesn't have a solution. So we'll see. We'll see what kind of pressure is caused by the closure of the Strait of Hormuz. We'll see. I think Russia and China might intervene because Russia and China don't want to see the global economy destroyed either. But and China also doesn't want to see the U.S. economy collapse either. The Chinese are very dependent on the U.S. consumer. So yeah, we'll see. I think that it's ultimately going to be pressure from China and Russia that will cause Iran to maybe relent on the strait. We'll see. We'll see what is the resolve of Iran and how things progress. But the conflict is back up again. It's hot again, and I hope that there isn't any escalation. I hope that the U.S. doesn't start targeting Iranian civilian infrastructure, because that's going to cause a reaction. It's going to cause Iran to respond, and that means like Muslims suffering. The infrastructure in the Gulf being hit, that's going to cause Muslims to suffer, potentially millions of Muslims to suffer, and I don't want to see that. I don't want to see that. But, let's be very honest about who's complicit in these crimes and what has led to the situation in which we find ourselves. Okay, guys, so let's move on to the second half of the show. Not the second half, but I just have a few things to share with you. Wanted to respond to this, like Zohran Mamdani. Okay, this was in the news as well because Benjamin Netanyahu is visiting New York, and if you recall, Zohran Mamdani, the Muslim mayor of New York City, one of his campaign promises, campaign rhetoric, was that he was going to arrest Benjamin Netanyahu and implement the arrest warrant from the ICC, the International Criminal Court, against Benjamin Netanyahu. So Netanyahu is visiting New York, is going to. And so the expectation was, okay, Mamdani, let's see you put your money where your mouth is. Are you going to arrest Netanyahu, the war criminal? So Mamdani released this video. Let's watch it.
Benjamin Netanyahu is a war criminal, the architect of a horrific genocide against the Palestinian people. He is responsible for the killing of more than 73,000 people, for the maiming of tens of thousands of children as those who survive undergo amputation without anesthesia, for the targeting of neonatal hospitals and maternity care centers, denying newborns even the chance to live, for the countless people he starved as he blocked food and humanitarian aid from reaching them, for the gunning down of hundreds of aid workers and journalists. And just last month, the UN confirmed that Palestinian children continue to be deliberately targeted and killed by Israeli armed forces, more than 8 months after the so-called ceasefire. The list goes on and on, all as we, as Americans, pay for the bombs that do the killing. There is a reason the International Criminal Court issued a warrant for his arrest. As human beings, we have spent generations building a shared understanding that there are crimes so grave they offend all of humanity. Anyone, with their eyes, with their heart, with their conscience, should recognize the devastation he has wrought and understand that he belongs before a court of law. As I've said, I agree with the ICC that Benjamin Netanyahu should be arrested and tried for his crimes, as I do for anyone else charged by the ICC. My administration has reviewed every avenue available under applicable law to determine whether New York City could execute the International Criminal Court's arrest warrant if Benjamin Netanyahu came here. It is clear that we do not have the independent legal authority to enforce this warrant. The federal government, however, does, and I call on them to join the ICC and execute this warrant. And I want to be equally clear. Benjamin Netanyahu is not welcome in New York City, nor is any other war criminal at large. While we cannot end the genocide on our own, we can decide whether our silence will become another weapon, and we can examine every tool we have to defend the humanity and dignity of all people. That is my commitment to you.
Yeah, so what did you expect? He has, my team has looked into every available avenue. And we just can't do it, guys. We just can't do it. Okay, well, you know, you could have known that in advance. You could have known that if you were serious, okay, about this kind of plan to execute the arrest warrant, like you could have looked into that before making it, you know, part of your stated platform where you bamboozled a lot of people to support you, and you made it seem like you're actually going to take practical steps against Zionism. But you didn't look into it. So how serious were you when you made these kinds of promises? You just benefited from that politically, but when it comes to actual implementation, oh, now you realize that it can't be executed. Now you realize that it's inapplicable. So I just don't like politicians, and I don't like Mamdani. Okay, I should have asked SNEAKO about that, because SNEAKO likes Mamdani and voted for him. But I think part of that might be just be rage bait, because, you know, the Zionists obviously hate or claim to hate Mamdani, and a lot of these white nationalists as well. So maybe part of SNEAKO's support is just rage bait against these people. But yeah, I don't like Mamdani. I never liked him. I don't like his face. I don't like, you know, he has a kind of face that you can't trust. And I've seen that face a million times. I recognize the physiognomy. Okay, physiognomy is real in Islam. Firasa. Okay, the way that a person's face is does have some correlation, or may have some indication. Like, it's not a determinative, definitive science, but there is like something spiritually or metaphysically pertinent about a person's face and their eyes and the structure of their face. And that's just the way that Allah has created people and the way that the world works. Something about his face that is untrustworthy to me, and I've always felt that, even before it became obvious that he's not implementing any of his campaign promises. Like the head of his police, the NYPD, the New York Police Department, the head is a huge Netanyahu supporter Zionist. He retained the Zionist head or police commissioner of the NYPD. It's a woman. He retained her. Could have replaced her, but he kept her. So what happened to getting rid of the Zionists in your administration in New York City? It was just all talk. And I've covered this in depth in previous shows, but Hamdani is not someone that you can trust, and he's better suited. Just go to a gay pride parade and stop pretending. Go dance with the transgenders and the homosexuals in the pride parade. That's what you're good for. Virtue signaling about how tolerant you are of all people, all human beings. As human beings, there are some crimes that as human beings no one can tolerate. It's nonsense. Okay, one other thing that I wanted to get into today is reacting to some feminist TikToks. I'll get that here. I'll talk about that later. All right, someone shared this with me. A brother shared this with me, so let's watch this and react.
Well, just because you hear a hadith doesn't mean that all of a sudden there's a legal ruling associated with it. And again, just because a hadith is sahih doesn't mean again that there's a legal ruling associated with it, right? So when we listen to a hadith, for example, I read the Quran, right? And I could read the Quran, it says establish prayer, right? That is very, very clear that there is a legal ruling is attached to that. But what does it mean to establish prayer? How many times am I establishing prayer? What does it look like? There are all of these questions. That's very different than, for example, a statement in the Quran that says, there will be gardens under which rivers will flow, right? Is there a legal ruling there? Yeah. Maybe not. So the same type of reflection needs to be applied to hadith. So when we say there's a hadith about political rulership, the Prophet ﷺ said, a nation will not prosper if a woman is at its head. Now, on the surface of it, it seems like a very clear statement. A nation will not prosper if a woman is at the head. The question then for us becomes, as individuals who are in the process of interpreting this, is, did the Prophet mean this as a general statement to apply to all contexts and all places? What was the situation in which he was responding to? And so what's interesting in this specific case is he had sent a letter to a female ruler, and she was, when the messenger came back, he said she had ripped up the letter and rejected the request for diplomatic relations. And his response to this was, a nation will not prosper if a woman is a ruler. So some legal scholars had taken this and said, it's a general statement. So therefore, we should approach it as a general prohibition that women should not be political rulers. But many later scholars came and said, maybe there's a nuance that we can add here because there was a context in which he said this. And so that's where legal interpretation and hadith becomes really important. That even when we hear a hadith, we have to conscientiously pause and try to understand that hadith before we jump to kind of making quick legal rulings.
Okay, so this is about the hadith in Sahih Bukhari. No nation will succeed or prosper that puts a woman in charge as its leader of its affairs, etc. And what she says at the beginning of the clip is correct. If you see a hadith, you read a hadith, or even a verse of the Quran, you don't immediately derive a legal ruling on the basis of that. That's what fiqh is for. That's what the ulama, the scholars, the fuqaha do. They have their methodology for understanding when you have this ayah, this hadith, okay, or this statement from the Sahaba, or this kind of practice of Medina, for example, or whatever source. What is the actual practice that you get out of that, the legal ruling that you get out of that? And that's what fiqh is for. That's what usul al-fiqh is for. So what she says there is correct. But then she applies it to this hadith. Okay, obviously feminists lose their mind over this hadith. The Prophet ﷺ makes a categorical statement. Okay, no nation will prosper that puts a woman in charge. Okay? And she makes a claim. She says, well, some scholars took this as a general statement. Others said, no, it's like specific. And it's specific to like the Persians at this time. And the Prophet ﷺ is only talking about the Persians. Like one specific example, like the Persians won't prosper. And yeah, so implying that that's the correct opinion. Like that's the opinion that we can go with. Okay. This is false. There is no scholar who limited this hadith to the Persians. Which scholar ever said this hadith is not general? This hadith is specific to the Persians at that time, and the time of the Prophet ﷺ, and has no applicability outside of that, and we can't take this as a general statement that we apply to our fiqh. Because it's applicable. Like the fiqh, can you have a khalifa who is like a khalifa who's a woman? Can you? Like, can you have a political leader who is a woman? All of the scholars say no. All of the scholars, all of the schools of fiqh, they say no. Actually, this is like ijma. This is something that is complete unanimity, consensus on that. And they all, by the way, cite this hadith, this sahih hadith. They all cite it. Okay? And so this drives the feminists insane. And so you have the sheikhas and the ustazas coming with this new interpretation and this lie, because she's claiming that, no, there are scholars who said that this is specific. Yeah, there are scholars who talked about the context of this hadith, the context of the Prophet ﷺ statement, the historical context, which she described. But they didn't say, okay, therefore it's limited to this particular historical incident. The hadith has no broader applicability. No scholar said that. And the reason is the language of the hadith itself. The Prophet ﷺ, he's made a very general statement. A general categorical statement. And on what basis are you saying that it's specific? That it's very specifically historical and it has no broader applicability? There's nothing in the hadith itself or the context of the hadith itself that tells you that no, it should be limited to just the Persians. You're only reading that into the context because it conflicts with your feminist sensibilities and your feminist concept of equality, that if you have a male leader, then you can have a female leader, and a female leader is just as good as a male leader, and they're exactly equal because men and women are exactly the same. It's only because of your feminist, brainwashed mind that you have this kind of tendency or this need to minimize the hadith or to distort it or to read it in this kind of specific way. But there's nothing in the hadith itself or anything in Islam in general that lends itself to that kind of feminist reading. This is something that you just invented. So this is a distortion of the deen. This is reform. This is lying, okay? Lying about the deen by these sheikhas, and it's disgusting. I'm literally disgusted by this trash. But you might think, oh, well, this is just some random woman on Instagram or TikTok. Who cares? Okay. But, this is the reality is that she's getting this from somewhere. Like, this person probably doesn't know anything about the Islamic tradition, as just demonstrated in the few words that she has shared with us here. But they're getting it from somewhere. And you know who they're getting it from? They're getting it from the compassionate imams. They're getting it from these simp imams. Okay, and I'll show you the receipts.
Well, that is a paraphrase of something found.
Look who it is. It's our good friend. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Yes, sir, Gadi. Here he is. Dr. Sheikh Yassar, what does he have to say about this hadith? Okay, this is a video from maybe 5 years ago, 4 or 5 years ago.
In Bukhari, the Prophet ﷺ said that no nation will prosper who puts its leader as a woman. Now, this hadith, our scholars have differed over it. Some have said that this is a specific reference to Persia at the time. And in fact, Ibn Hajar, the famous commentator, mentions this, that this is not a fiqhi ruling that can be applied to every scenario and circumstance. Rather, this...
Where does Ibn Hajar say that? Where does Ibn Hajar say that this is a hadith that doesn't apply more generally? Ibn Hajar doesn't say that. Ibn Hajar doesn't say that at all. In fact, Ibn Hajar takes the position, the position that everyone else takes, that women shouldn't be in leadership positions. That's Ibn Hajar's fiqh, actually. But where Yassar Qadi does Ibn Hajar say that this hadith is only limited to this context? Yes, Ibn Hajar in his Sharh, okay, in Fath al-Bari, does say that this is the context. Okay, this is what happened with the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. This is he does mention that. But where does he take the extra step that you're claiming that this is not generally applicable, this is only specific to one historical incident? Show me that citation. And Suhaib, even before Yassar Qadi, Suhaib Webb was putting out this nonsense on his social media. And there were some students of knowledge who curb stomped Suhaib Webb. And I think he deleted his post. I couldn't find it. But I remember Suhaib Webb was also making this simp argument about Ibn Hajar, specifically mentioning Ibn Hajar. And this is a lie. This is a lie against Ibn Hajar, and Yassar Qadi is repeating it.
This is something that the Prophet is saying, that this nation, the Persian Empire, because they had appointed a particular princess to be their queen, and she was not qualified, and things were going on. So it is as if the Prophet is saying this nation, and he's not saying no nation. This nation that has now appointed this lady as its ruler will not succeed. And in fact, that's exactly what happened. She turned out to be the last princess of Iran, the last queen of Iran, of a Persian Empire, the Sassanid Empire, I should say. And the Sassanid Empire collapsed after that, and eventually the Muslims conquered it. So some scholars say this was a prediction, and that seems to be the case. As for our times, and issues of this nature, really these are fatwas that should be sought directly from ulama of a particular country and time. We are not living anymore in the systems of the previous times. There is no khalifa, there is no unilateral leader that used to exist. What we now have are prime ministers, presidencies, shared power, and these require different fatwas in scenarios, and perhaps we can fine-tune depending on the circumstance and situation of the countries that we happen to live in.
A lot of
Perhaps we can fine-tune, perhaps, we have changing time, so perhaps we can, adapt. Okay, so this is Yassar Qadi inventing statements from Ibn Hajar that don't exist, putting that out in a video. Okay, and this is the trickle-down effect. Okay, the compassionate imams, with their simping, it gets watched by these, these people. Like, the biggest fans of the compassionate imams are women. Like, that's the majority of their audience. Okay, the majority of the audience are their women, and this is why. Like, they just are stroking the egos of these women, the sense of entitlement, telling them, oh, this hadith and this verse of the Quran, it's completely in line with your feminist presuppositions, your feminist ideology. Don't worry, this is the explanation. Like, don't you know that this hadith was actually in context of the Persian princess, blah blah blah. Like, their biggest supporters and their biggest fans are all these feminist women who just eat this stuff up, no fact check, because it conforms with their presuppositions and their hawa. And then they go, these sheikhas who have been trained by the Sheikh Yassar Qadi and Sheikh Sandwich, Imam Sandwich, okay? They've been trained, and then they do these Instagram reels, these TikToks. Oh, didn't you know that this hadith, you can't take a legal ruling from it? That's the sanad, that's the isnad from the, from the feminists. Oh, on the previous stream I said like the isnad starts like on a dirty mattress in a Brooklyn tunnel. Like that's the origin. Okay, the origin is a dirty mattress in a Brooklyn tunnel that then goes to the feminist academics, who then goes to like the Christians, right? The Christian apologists who feminized their entire religion and liberalized their entire religion. Then it goes to the compassionate imams. Then it goes to the Instagram sheikhas and the TikTok ustazas. And then it goes to your daughter. And then it goes to your daughter, who then says, you know, I'm going to take off my hijab, and oh, this is a misogynistic religion, and I don't even accept hadith anymore. Like do you see the sanad? that's the sanad, okay? And the sooner you recognize that, the better. The sooner you recognize that, the better. And by the way, like their explanation of the hadith, like if the real feminists, the real hardcore feminists won't even accept that. They'll say that that's misogynistic. They'll accuse the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam of being a misogynist, because even if like imagine like someone like imagine like there is a car accident, you know, there's like a car accident and it's a woman driver. The woman driver is at fault. And then I see that car accident and I say that, well, that's what you get with female drivers. You know, that's what you know, if you have a female driver, expect the worst. Okay. Feminists will lose their minds. Like, you're a misogynist just because it was a female driver. Don't you know how many male drivers get into accidents? Blah, blah, blah. Like, you made a general statement. Okay. Even if it was just limited, like, even if it's just an off the cuff statement relevant to a very specific incident, it's misogynistic for you to phrase it that way. In the same way, it would be misogynistic, according to these feminist standards, that the Persians, they put a woman in charge, they put this princess in charge, they make her the queen, and then the nation like is destroyed, and then the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam makes a statement like, well, no nation will prosper that puts women in charge. How is that? Like, according to their feminist standards, that's still misogynistic. That's still a misogynistic statement, even if you don't derive any legal rulings from that. So this is what happens, like, brain dead simps, compassionate imams, simp imams, and their sheikhas and their ustazas. The problem is you cannot concede to the feminists the entire point, the entire underlying ideology that men and women are equal and that men and women have equal capacities, because that's simply false. Okay, that's simply a myth that's been created by liberal modernity, and it's being promulgated and it's being accepted by these different religions, and it contradicts Islam very clearly. Islam does not accept that. No, men and women, yes, they might be spiritually have the same worth in the eyes of Allah. No doubt about that. But in terms of their capacities, in terms of their abilities, there's significant differences. There are significant differences, and that's relevant. And Islam recognizes those differences because Allah has made us different. Allah has made men and women different. Okay, with different capacities, with different levels of intelligence, with different levels of planning ability. And that's why men, for example, are authorized to be the guardians of women. Men are authorized to be the leaders, the authorities over women. This is clear in the Quran. It's clear in Hadith. And there's been no question about this for 1400 years. Okay, it's only because of modern ideology of feminism that these things are now being questioned, and we're following the Jews and the Christians down the lizard path, handspan by handspan. And these compassionate imams are only helping facilitate that. So shame on them. Shame on them. If you want to criticize these TikTok feminists, criticize the roots of the problem. The roots of the problem are very clear. And then this brother made a meme that I thought was very good. You guys familiar with this image of Dwayne Wade alley-oop? Like he threw the, I don't know if it was off the backboard or Dwayne Wade just threw the ball up. Dwayne Wade is number 3 here in the front. He threw the ball up on a fast break, and then LeBron, you know, head at the rim, dunks it. Okay, and then the photographer captured the perfect moment of Dwayne Wade like showboating, like, and LeBron still in the air, cranked it all the way back to slam it. So that's this is what's happening on TikTok and Instagram right now. And as I said, there's been a resurgence of this kind of feminism that we've seen. This is another TikTok. Let's react to this.
Muslims are not going to like to hear me say this, but I'm going to say it. In the same way that Zionism has infected Judaism to the point that it's inseparable, I fear that misogyny in Islam is the same way. I'm Muslim. I love being Muslim. Inshallah, I will be Muslim my entire life. Of course, when you read the Quran, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala loves women. There is no sexism. In the same way that you read the Torah and there's zero about Zionism. This
False. Torah is full of Zionism.
hatred is taught to these communities. It has infested these communities so much that there are such rampant issues within them that your first instinct to defend the religion rather than acknowledge the systemic issues that have infected them is completely taking away any accountability from Muslims in this.
So notice what she's saying, and this is what's strange. And some of these converts, I don't know who this particular person is, but sometimes when they speak, they sound like they're not Muslim, actually. Like, she's saying the problems, the systematic problems within the religion, the problems, we need to have accountability. Okay? Is that what a Muslim says? Run it back. Your first instinct is to defend the religion. Yeah, what's wrong with that?
Acknowledge the systemic issues that have infected them is completely taking away any accountability from Muslims in the same way that it takes away accountability from Jewish people to solve these systemic issues within our religion. I'm always the first to defend Islam, and of course I will defend Islam because I know my book, I know my God. But I think from now on, I'm gonna keep my mouth shut.
I doubt that. I highly doubt that you're going to keep your mouth shut.
When people, especially people who grew up Muslim, firsthand experienced how that misogyny was weaponized against them, I'm going to keep my mouth shut when y'all talk. Like, I will from now on.
Yeah, please do. Please keep your mouth shut.
Always allow space to people, and especially women, who have deconstructed from all of the misogyny and hatred found within, you know, their experiences of the religion. None of that should excuse or allow for Muslim genocide, by the way. I think I'm understanding more how my initial reaction to people criticizing Islam for being misogynistic, blah, 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 whatever, is really just getting in the way of being able to, as a community, take accountability for and solve those issues that, whether we like it or not, are here.
Yeah. What does that even mean? Like, what is this word salad? Okay, my first reaction to defend Islam. Yeah, shouldn't a Muslim have the reaction to defend Islam? But she's saying that, no, we have to take accountability for the misogyny in our religion. Okay. Yeah, what's the misogyny that you're referring to? The fact that Muslims in Islam, Muslim women aren't given certain leadership roles, and they're not considered to be the leaders within their families. They have to submit and obey to their husbands. Is that the misogyny? You know, is it the fact that women can't travel alone? They have to have their guardians. Is it the fact that, you know, the inheritance that is given to women is different than from men? Men can marry multiple wives, women can't have multiple husbands, and on and on. Like, is this the misogyny that you're talking about? Okay. So, unfortunately, you have converts that have you really converted to Islam? Like, did you accept Islam, or did you accept like some kind of feminist reformed understanding of Islam that's not actually Islam, it's just a bunch of slop? Like, what have you actually converted to if you're a convert? And then you're going on your soapbox, doing your Instagram, and you're accusing Muslims of not taking accountability for the misogyny in their experiences of the religion. So part of me thinks that this is a psyop. Like, there seems like some of these people are not really Muslim. They're just putting on a scarf, wrapping a scarf on their heads, and they have certain kinds of lines designed to drive more Muslim women to become hardcore feminists and destroy their families, destroy their marriages, destroy Muslim communities. That seems like there seems to be a, because I'm seeing like a resurgence in the feminist narrative. Like, for a while there, we had won the gender war. It felt like, okay, for a while. And now there's been this massive wave of feminism through social media. And that's why I'm doubling down on my efforts, or redoubling my efforts to combat this. But it seems artificial. It seems like this is an artificial campaign. And unfortunately, it's effective because you have a lot of Muslim women, daughters, wives who are on social media. They're consuming this slop, and they're, oh, this is a sheikha. Oh yeah, this matches up with what I believe. And their whole subjective perception is been engineered by a feminist society, of course, a feminist educational system, starting from kindergarten and all the way to graduate school. And then you also have the religious side of it with compassionate imams, an entire religious architecture of authority in Muslim countries and in the West that has been shoveling this feminist slop from the mimbar of the masajid and from these religious YouTube channels and these very popular multi-million subscriber YouTube channels, just pumping the heads of Muslims with feminist slop, turning them into hardcore blue-haired feminists with their nose rings, or just a bunch of simps. Just a bunch of simps, and it's causing a problem. And I shared this post. Let's see. I discovered after marriage that my wife had herpes. So I'll read this to you. You can't see it. I married my wife 7 years ago, and we have 2 children. We're both in our early 30s. Before marriage, I had never been in any relationship or had any romantic or sexual past. Because of my values, I wanted to marry someone who had never committed zina, and clearly told her this was important to me. She told me she was a virgin, had never been in a relationship, and I trusted her because she appeared religious. Just before our honeymoon, I discovered that she had a serious past relationship involving zina. She denied important details, minimized it, and continued to tell me that she was a virgin. I tried to forgive her and move forward, and then she became pregnant with my child. Later, I discovered that she had 2 serious past relationships involving zina. These included sex, travel, and holidays. She also had genital herpes, which she hid from me despite knowing how important these matters were to me. I understand that a person may repent and choose not to disclose every detail of their past. However, she knew my values and my preference for marrying someone who had never committed zina. If she did not want to disclose her past, she could have rejected my proposal and walked away without disclosing it. Instead, she lied to me by presenting herself as a virgin, which was not true. She hid information that could have affected my decision. I feel hurt, deceived, and that my trust was broken. I still respect her and have always treated her with kindness. I have never used her past against her. However, the betrayal, the hidden past, the STD, and unanswered questions have caused deep emotional pain, resentment, and trust issues. My intimacy and passion have decreased, and I struggle with health concerns. Sometimes I wonder if I was a fool for trusting so deeply, or if I was manipulated. I worry whether she truly loves me or is only with me for what I provide. Since she's my first and only relationship, I have no other experience to compare this with. I believe she has changed, but I still struggle with the pain of how our marriage began and the feeling that things could have been different if there had been honesty from the start. I am carrying a lot of pain. I imagine you're carrying a lot of pain. Somehow you still respect someone who lied blatantly to your face and endangered your health, endangered the health of your children. And this is increasingly common, okay? When you empower women, okay, when I say, for example, women's education is a bad idea, women's empowerment is a bad idea, sending women to become empowered, working in the corporate world, this is a bad idea, okay? Sending your daughters to graduate school is a bad idea. When I say all these things, or having your women travel alone, okay, going on these holidays or going on these knowledge retreats is a bad idea. When I say these things, people say Daniel's a misogynist. Daniel doesn't understand fiqh. Who have you studied with? Who did you study with? Because compassionate Imam Simp told me that this is all fine and that we need to love and respect and empower our women. Okay, that's the kind of response I get. But this is the result. You know, this is the kind of thing that happens when you allow women to just be on the loose like this, violating the Islamic guidelines for modesty, violating the Islamic guidelines for restricting the movement and the freedom of movement of women. It's exactly to prevent zina. It's exactly to prevent zina, whether it's actual physical zina or it's just emotional attachment that they have to men that's going to cause a problem for you, a severe problem in your life when you're married to this person. Or if you're married, you know, she gets emotionally attached to some other guy, her coworker, for example, or her professor, or whoever else, her classmate. So I've had many people over the years come and say, Daniel, I thought you were a misogynist. I hated you. I hated your guts. These are men talking. I thought you were a disgusting misogynist, woman hater. You know, I campaigned for my masjid to block you from speaking, and I signed a petition for you to be, you know, to not be allowed at our community center, etc. But then I got burned. You know, I got divorce raped by my wife. And, you know, I can't see my kids anymore. And then I realized that you were right about everything. Actually, Daniel, you were right about everything because of my wife or because of my daughter. Or even my mother. Like, someone even told me about their mom. Like, he said that, Daniel, you know, when you were talking about women's education and preventing women's empowerment, I said, this disgusting woman hater, Daniel, I was going around all the WhatsApp groups warning against you, blackening your name. But then the COVID lockdowns happened, and my mom, she had been, you know, lifelong working in the medical field. She was a doctor. And then, you know, because of the lockdown, she had to quit, or it wasn't viable for her to be, you know, she couldn't really go to the office as frequently, and so she was at home. She was at home, and she was cooking, and she was cleaning. And, you know, this is an adult talking about his elderly mom in the medical field. And then I realized that she's a completely different person. She's a completely different person. She's like a million times better as a mom when she's at home. Like, her personality actually changed. And I realized Daniel was right. Daniel was right this whole time. And, you know, he apologized and he asked for forgiveness, like a beautiful brother. But this is what happens. Like, this is what happens. I get people tell me, Daniel, you were right. And, you know, I wish you would realize that. I wish some of these haters would realize that earlier. Sometimes they don't realize it until it's too late. So when I say, for example, in this post, I said, like, look, compassionate imams like Asim al-Hakim tell women that they can lie about their virginity and say that they're virgins when they're not. This is garbage. This is reformism. They're inventing something in Islam. Islam doesn't give women the right to lie about their virginity. You can conceal your sins by just don't mention it, but you don't have to get married. Okay, if you know, like this brother in the post mentioned, like, she didn't have to disclose her hoard past to me. Okay, but she could have just walked away from the marriage instead of insisting that she's a virgin and that she has no experience. Okay, but Asim al-Hakim and these other simp imams, they say, no, you can lie about it. You should lie about it. This is a disaster. Just think about the health implications, number one. What if she's had abortions, by the way? If she has had abortions, then that is threatening to the future viability of a pregnancy. Like, you're more likely to miscarry your child if you've had a history of abortions. Even one abortion increases your chances of miscarriage by X%. That's something very critical for a potential husband to know. Imagine the disaster, the tragedy of a miscarriage, because this whore has been sleeping around and has had one abortion, 2 abortions, 3 abortions. So, yeah, I have no sympathy for compassionate imams, reformists like this Wahhabi Asim al-Hakim telling women to lie about their past as hojabis, basically. Anyway, so this is why you need to, like, for any of the brothers out there, you have a potential wife that you're pursuing, you need to insist on a health checkup and a blood test. And you get it too. You know, both of you get the health checkup. You say, we have to do this for transparency. You don't have to tell her that, oh, it's because I suspect that you possibly have slept around. Just like for health purposes, you know, there could be dangerous health consequences for whatever, like blood diseases. Okay, you don't have to make it sexual, but get the health check. Make sure that they check for herpes type 2. Okay, that's the one that's sexually transmitted, I think. And then also HPV and also HIV. Okay? These are very significant STDs that endanger potential children that you'll have. So you need to get a blood test. You need to get a blood test. And, you know, virginity tests, it's going to be difficult to get her to take a virginity test. But if it were up to me, I would mandate that. I would mandate that because that's the situation we're dealing with. Just because she appears religious, okay, what does that even mean anymore? She like she puts a scarf on her head. Like, at this point, even the niqabis, many of these niqabis look at their behavior. Okay, it's just a disaster. So, and obviously there are some good muslimat, good Muslim women, and we're not talking about them. And yeah, a good Muslim woman who's pious and is a virgin, like, that's the best, like, thing that you can hope for in this dunya. Okay, especially at this time. Like, the Prophet ﷺ said this in his time. Okay, imagine now with the rampant nature of zina. And the thing, like, these simps will also say, oh, well, a lot of the guys are also involved in zina. Yeah, that's bad too. You know, Muslim men doing zina, that's also a disaster. But it's not as bad as women doing it. Okay, it's not as bad as women doing it. For women doing it is much more destructive, is much more devastating to the community. It destroys the fabric of community. That's why if you want to destroy a society, if you want to destroy a nation, just get their women to leave modesty and start being promiscuous. That's the #1 way to destroy society. That's why the West is collapsing. And any country that's adopting Western culture and Western ways, specifically regarding women, is also following down the same lizard hole, falling down the same path of destruction. This is the death of nations, the death of civilization, and it starts with promiscuity of women. Promiscuity of men, that's bad too, but it's just not as devastating. So yeah, that's what I wanted to share with you. What do you guys have to say? Let me look at your comments. Looks like some of the... Okay, I hope all the super chats were saved, because when I brought SNEAKO on, I might have deleted some. I don't know, but it looks like they're all here. Here we go. This was SNEAKO's comment: deport Tate. Okay, Lord Meislin, opinions on Lily J. I think it's clear. Yeah, I mentioned before on the show that my problem with Lily J, she's being accused of squandering donation money. She raised money for Gaza, saying that she's going to build a bakery. And now there's questions. There's a non-Muslim outlet in Australia that reported there's some problems with the registration. Like there's no registration on file for such a bakery or for such a charity. It's not registered as a charity. It's registered as a business. And furthermore, there's the use of AI in her social media posts showing her like feeding African children or feeding Palestinian children. There's a lot of use of AI. So it's like she's faking philanthropy. She's faking actually spending the money, you know, the thousands, hundreds of thousands that's being donated to her is not actually going to Palestinians. It's not going to Gaza. It's not going to Africa or wherever. So these were all allegations, and a lot of others jumped on the like dogpile basically against Lily J, including like some of these Wahhabis. So like Fareed Bahraini also was like, oh, she's like the devil, like she's worse than the devil or something like that, he tweeted. And I was pointing out that Fareed, like all that Lily J needs to do is like make dua for MBZ or like start bootlicking MBZ and Fareed will shut right up. Like Fareed is now an authority or is like a objective voice for who is good and who is bad. Like you're a bootlicker, bro. You're a bootlicker for MBZ, like one of the biggest shayateen in the world today, allied with Netanyahu, facilitating the destruction of the Muslim world, a proxy for the Zionists, and you can't say a word of criticism against him. And now you're now the arbiter of right and wrong, the judge of like who's good and who's bad. Like this is just a farce. So I pointed that out. But in terms of my perspective of Lily J, I've covered her stuff on previous shows. And just to remind you, like I pointed out that she has a lot of simping feminist material that's bad. She clearly doesn't like abide by basic hijab requirements. She's using her beauty. Okay, for those who are into that, I don't find her beautiful. For those who find her beautiful, she's like using that and like showcasing that and using that for getting donations or expanding her reach, expanding her brand. Like this is a predatory relationship that she has, a parasocial predatory relationship that she has with the Muslim audience that she's been able to acquire in a short amount of time. Okay. And you're donating money to such a person, like you're following her in this kind of way. And it's similar to an Andrew Tate situation. Like, okay, initially a person is like this, they're just converted to Islam. Great. Alhamdulillah, we're happy about that. Welcome to the deen. Welcome to Islam. You're my sister in Islam, my brother in Islam. Well, then where does it go? Like, what's the trajectory? And with her, the trajectory was just stagnant and increasingly feminist, increasing with this immodesty. So I wasn't in support of that. So you can criticize like whether her charity is legitimate or not. You know, I can't say anything factually about that. And I don't like to say things that are speculative. I don't like to get to, if nothing has been established. Yeah, there are a bunch of red flags with the use of AI. Like, that's inexcusable. But you could say that, okay, it was a bad judgment call, but she didn't actually steal the money. She didn't actually misappropriate those funds. It just made a bad judgment call about using AI in this social media. And that's wrong, but it's not as bad as misappropriating funds. But yeah, I think that there needs to be some accountability for the use of, especially if you're able to raise all this money, maybe in the hundreds of thousands of dollars. There needs to be some accountability for that. How is that actually going to the intended recipients? And that kind of accountability is needed for all of these charities. Okay, all of these people that are using any kind of tragedy that's happening, any active conflict, active genocide around the world involving Muslims, and they use that for generating funds every penny needs to be going to the intended recipients, like every penny, and there's just no accountability. Lily J is ultimately if it is the case that she's misappropriating funds, which I don't know, she's just a small fish, and the bigger fish are like Islamic Relief USA, okay, Helping Hand. Like, these are the ones who they're getting tens of millions of dollars per year in donations, and there's just so much misappropriated funds that has been just like, it's been admitted. Okay, wasn't it Helping Hand that gave Khalid Beydoun $2 million that they had raised, like, as a commission for his fundraising for them for Palestine? $2 million. Okay, that's just a recent example. I made a video about it, and to this day we don't know what Khalid Beydoun has done with that money, with the $2 million. It's like been forgotten down the memory hole. Like, that's $2 million. So yeah, the whole charity sector, and this is something, it's not just Muslims, other groups as well. There's too much taking advantage, corruption, misappropriation. Accountability is needed. And there's one brother that I share often. His Substack is called Towards Ihsan, if I recall correctly. It's by Ahmed Sheikh, and he does, like, if you want to know more about Islamic Relief, Working Towards Ihsan newsletter. It's a Substack. You can go, and it's Ihsan spelled with an E. And he has a lot of good, he does like auditing. He looks at these charities. He looks at, because there are legal requirements to let the government know for your charity status, like what money is coming in, how you're spending that money. So he audits that. He he does interviews when they're willing to talk to him, and he has a lot of good information. I share that whenever I can. It's our brother Ahmed Sheikh, and I interviewed him in the past too. And you can check out his Substack, his blog. It's a lot of good information. William and Gabe's World. How's it going? Hey, brother, how are you? Doing well, alhamdulillah. How are you doing? How are the boys? Hope you guys are doing well. Noah. Yo, Daniel, bro, can we go for dinner this weekend? What is this? British pounds? You're gonna fly me to London for dinner? Yeah, let's see. Warrior says, any update on setting up the MS merch drop? Yeah, I haven't been working on it because I've been busy with my book. But I hope to, like, I have to figure that out. And we have some merch, MuslimSkeptic merchandise that you might want to be willing to purchase. But yeah, stay on the lookout for that. William and Gabe's World. Top G is about to be the bottom G. I hope not. I hope that doesn't happen to him. I'm actually not surprised about this Mexican Jew. I still believe Christians and Muslims can unite to fight the Zayos. Yeah, in theory, it should be possible, right? But unfortunately, it keeps getting sabotaged. Muhammad Abdu 2810 says, love you, brother, for the sake of Allah. Barakallahu feek. May Allah love you, brother. Appreciate it. Thanks for your super chat. End sentence next line, please, says, I knew Nick was in the tribe. Said months ago, we Muslims need to be more assertive and careful who we're making alliances with. The Prophet ﷺ said, war is deception. We are at war with the wider anti-Islam industry. That's true. Margbar Nick Fuentes, inshallah. This is not a threat. This is not a threat, okay? Against Nick Fuentes. This is not a threat. It's just, this is being facetious, right? Just being facetious. But his bad ideology, yes. Margbar white nationalism, Margbar racism, Margbar, you know, Zayo appropriation of populism and Christian nationalism, Margbar, those ideologies all day. Margbar anti-Muslim slop, Okay, flooding the timeline, flooding the newsfeed, Magbar, all of that ideology, all of that anti-Islam narrative. Nutty Caller says, beautiful to see how SNEAKO has matured so much in his deen. Good to have you back, bro. One of the best episodes of 2026 so far. Glad you enjoyed it. Inshallah, we'll have many more good episodes this year. S3MDD says, Nick's spiral also lines up with Trip with Keith Woods. He was mentioning how black-pilled he was on his cause, not black-pilled he was on his cause, not inconceivable that he gave up. I don't know what he said on his trip. So Keith Woods, I debated Keith Woods. Coincidentally, SNEAKO moderated that debate. It's on Rumble, if you wanted to see that debate that I had with the white nationalist Keith Woods. And it was funny, after that debate, Nick was raging at Keith Woods for his performance against me. But I don't know what the black pill was about his cause. Like white nationalism? Maybe. Maybe. So maybe he switched up, or he gave up on it. Dawa Trucker, how's it going, bro? On the authority of Abu Hurairah, radiallahu anhu, who said, I heard the Messenger of Allah, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, say, what I have forbidden for you, avoid. What I have ordered you to do as much of it as you can. Al-Bukhari and Muslim. Yeah, this is a good hadith. I think, I'm not sure, but if I recall correctly, Imam Nawawi also collected this hadith in his Arba'in. And it's like one of these foundational hadith of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. What I have forbidden you, avoid it. You know, just stay away from it. And what I've ordered you to do as much of it as you can, you know, to your ability. So it kind of prioritizes the prohibitions. Prioritizes, like, protect yourself against the prohibitions, and that's the priority. And the way that one scholar actually explained this concept, it's a very important concept. That imagine that you have like a container. Okay, yeah, you have a container for water. And this container, you take it and you try to put water in it. And you try to fill it up. Okay, like you take it to the faucet and you try to fill it with water. And you can have the water on full blast. But if this container has holes in it, it doesn't matter how much water you pour in, it's just going to leak out constantly. And it'll never get filled. It'll never actually get filled. It'll never hold enough water because it has holes. It's just leaking all that water. And that's an analogy for your sins. The sins are like holes in this container. And and the water, the faucet, like you can have it just dripping water or you can have it on full blast. Those are your good deeds. Okay, these are what the Prophet ﷺ is telling you to do from good deeds. And if you have too many holes in this container, then even if you're doing so many good deeds, okay, you're giving so much charity, you're praying so much nawafil, you're praying tahajjud, you're doing good acts, like you're helping people, and you're just dedicated to khair, it's just not going to fill, you're not going to get any spiritual fullness, okay? And you're not going to elevate yourself because that container is not being filled because there's holes in it. There's just all this leakage from haram. That's just a visual that one scholar was describing. And yeah, it's a very important hadith from the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Thanks, Dawa Trucker, for that. Ridwan 2182, thanks for your super chat. Read Deuteronomy 14:21, classic verse against Goy. Should we read that? Let's see. Deuteronomy 14:21. It says, "You shall not eat anything that has died naturally. You may give it to the sojourner who is within your towns that he may eat, or you may sell it to a foreigner. For you are a people holy to the Lord your God. You shall not boil a young goat in its mother's milk." Interesting. So this is one of the mitzvot. Don't cook a young goat in its mother's milk. This is why for kosher, you're not supposed to mix milk products with meat products. So the Jews who keep kosher, they won't eat like a cheeseburger. Okay, cheeseburger. Why? Because it's cheese. That's a dairy product with beef, and this goes against Deuteronomy. And it's like mentioned multiple times, not mixing a young goat in its mother's milk. So why is this a verse about the goyim? Because it's taking the meat and it's giving it to the foreigner, I guess. Let's see. Next, why does the US accuse Iran of breaking the MOU? Why? Because they want to present themselves as the good guys and to justify aggression against Iran. That's the reason. Dower Trucker says, he made it sound like he's someone in the White House, and has tried to literally look for all viable options in order to try a criminal, a mobster, a world-class genocider protected. Yeah, Mamdani, yeah. Yeah, it's just rhetoric. Big Muj K says, off topic, but curious of your take of the success of quote-unquote Muslim or former Muslims in literature. Muslims, especially hijabis, love Khalid Hosseini, and to a lower extent, people like Daniel Nayeri. Yeah, it's a psyop. Like, again, they love these native informants, like these brown people who are going to talk about the problems in Islam. These brown people who are just going to infiltrate, and sometimes they're just like the white converts who are going to infiltrate, and they're going to say like, yeah, I'm Muslim now, we need to be more feminist, and we need to be more accountable about the misogyny in our religion or our experience of the religion. Like, this is like a Trojan horse tactic, and we'd have to be smarter about it. Ali says, when are you releasing your book, Unk? Barakallahu Feek. We'll see. I have to finish writing it first, but I'm hoping that'll be released this year. It'll be finished, inshallah, soon, like within the next few weeks, I hope. Maybe editing will take a little bit longer, but then I have to see how I want to distribute it. Because maybe I can get a publisher who will accept publishing it, or maybe I'll have to self-publish. We'll see. Because it's going to be spicy, so we'll see if any publisher wants to, you know, get in the kitchen, feel the heat. YC9 says, our boy Ostadko. Well, SNEAKO? Is that referring to SNEAKO? Typical Mr. Gamer. Are you still doing matchmaking on Alesna? To be honest, supporting you has become a litmus test to see which women are feminists. Yeah, but there's just not like... There's matchmaking that we did. We had a marriage retreat earlier this year in Turkey. It was a very nice retreat, alhamdulillah. Like a 2-day or 4-day retreat, rather. And yeah, that had a matchmaking component. So that's we hope to do more retreats in the future. But people really liked it. As for being a litmus test, it is what it is, you know. I wish there were like better options, that it was more common to see critiques of feminism, but people just don't want to talk about it. People just don't want to stick their necks out and say, yeah, these women are out of control. Yeah, maybe women's empowerment was a mistake. Yeah, maybe women's education is a mistake. Like, who's saying that? And that's what's directly immediately relevant to your marriage, because what causes the divorce is the empowered woman, who's not going to be willing to submit to your authority as the husband. And so no marriage can succeed like that. That's why Islam makes it the model of marriage with the husband in charge. This is what the Quran teaches. Muhammad Zaman says, been thinking about raising kids in the modern world, and I wondered if you want your kids to do dawah like you, or do you want them to get day jobs? I want them to get day jobs, for sure. And, you know, doing dawah, they can just build on that and see where it goes. If they want to dedicate themselves to dawah full time, I support that. But I want them to have the experience of working. You know, I worked for many years and had to go through that. And it's experience that's important, and you need to make your way financially in this world and develop financial independence and be able to hold down a job, be accountable. And that's definitely what I want for my kids as well. And it's only through doing that that you can gain the independence where you do dawah the right way, where you do dawah and you teach the right things and you don't modify your message because of political pressure or because of financial constraint. You're worried about speaking out against the dominant ideology or feminism or liberalism or LGBT because you're worried that the paycheck might not come through because the masjid board is going to fire you. Like, if you want to do dawah the right way, you need to have financial dependence, and you can only gain that through your own work, you know, through your own work. And or unless like you're a multi-millionaire, like from your family, like you've inherited like millions of dollars, okay, then you can do dawah full time, and because you have that financial independence. Or maybe you're like a crypto millionaire, then you can do that. Jawad Hussein says, can you do an episode on how to raise kids, discipline, etc.? Yeah, once I get more regular on streaming, maybe we can do that. We can have an episode dedicated to that. Simon Lee says, do you think Yaqeen will accept to publish your book? Well, we'll see. We'll see if they accept it. Yeah, as long as they give me a good royalty. I want $50 for every book that they sell. Okay, and now I'm just looking at the regular chat. See, my bro Sunnah Quest is in the chat. How are you doing, bro? Subscribe to Sunnah Quest, his channel on YouTube. Oh, look at this. Ragnar. Haven't seen Ragnar in a long time, brother Ragnar. I don't know what you're saying here in the chat, but good to see you. YC9 says, if this war continues, Medkhalis will release the fatwa banning the use of guided ballistic missiles because if there's a chance they might miss the target. Yeah, I'm surprised that fatwa hasn't come out yet, but it's probably because it's going to bring into question all of the military technology that their governments are buying from the US, like the Timu versions, the Timu F-35, the Timu Abram tanks, and the Timu like Apache helicopters that the US sells to these countries. So they don't want to jeopardize. They want to make a fatwa that can be perceived as going against their own rulers. Ali Nazari says, Daniel, how are you? I'm doing good, bro. Thanks for asking. Good to see you, Ragnar. Hope you're doing well. Bozo says the Sahabi narrating was reminded of the hadith during the Battle of Jamal when Aisha radiallahu anha led an army. It's clear how the Sahaba understood it. Radic says, what do you think about Shahrazada's recent sayings about how Islamdom has failed? I saw some of that on X. Shahrazada, sometimes he's like trolling. And obviously I don't agree with some of his takes. I consider him a good brother still. And people get frustrated. And they express their frustration in different ways. And I think that there are criticisms that you can make of Muslims in the world today, especially if you look at certain regions, certain mentalities. Generalizing it to all Islamdom, I don't think that's fair. I don't think that's fair, like, characterization. And why do you have to make it that general? And it's like a kind of emotional thing. Like, you're emotionally lashing out. Like, just control your emotions and critique the side that deserves to be critiqued. Critique the problem. Be more specific instead of ragging on the entire religion or the entire ummah. Like, that in itself is not something that Muslims should do. Rather, if we have a problem, even if it's a problem with big segments of the ummah, just add that qualifier. Like, add the qualifier. And it's true, like, some of the problems that he's pointing out, like, I don't know if you saw this clip. This made me depressed earlier today. Actually, I saw a clip, and basically it was some event that was happening in the UK where it's like a Islamic youth event where they're screening the World Cup final, Spain versus Argentina, I think it was. And so they have a big screen projecting the match, and then there's someone reciting Quran, like, in front on stage. And so he's reciting Quran, and then people are watching the soccer match. Like, how's that appropriate? Like, while reciting Quran, like, people are watching TV. That's like part of the program. Like, what is the point of that? Like, if you want to watch soccer, watch soccer. If you want to listen to Quran, listen to Quran. But don't disrespect the Quran by doing both at the same time. But that's not even the worst of it. The worst of it is, while the recitation is going on, there's a goal that's scored. Okay, Spain, I guess, scored a goal. And then these people in the audience are just losing it. Like, they're celebrating. They're, like, throwing chairs. They're throwing drinks. Like, they're just literally, it's like chimping out, basically, while Quran is being recited. And interestingly, the ayah that was read is mentioning adab, the punishment of Allah. Anyway, like, this is just shocking. Like, and this is like Muslim youth. So, like, where is the failure? Like, this is a massive failure. Like, this is, and there were, like, elders, and there were different, like, I guess, shuyukh in the audience or in that crowd. Like, and you're letting this go on. So these are big failures. Like, we have a lot of problems. It's true. Like, we have a lot of problems, and one of the things that Shahrazada mentioned is that, we failed the Palestinians. The Palestinians have been failed by their Muslim brothers, many of their Muslim brothers, if not all of us living in this time. And that's a depressing reality. And, the difference is, like, we should be able to see the problems and address them instead of being delusional about them. Instead of being delusional and telling ourselves lies that, no, everything is fine. No, we're the best. No, we're just dominating. Yeah, sometimes we win, and we can celebrate that, and we can, be proud about that and puff out our chest. But when there are mistakes, and when there are deficiencies, and when there are systematic problems, then we need to call that out. And we need to call it out in a responsible way, not exaggerate, not say that, oh, Islamdom has failed. I don't think that's right. And address those problems. I think ultimately that's what Shahrazada wants. Like, Shahrazada wants the problems to be addressed, and he's frustrated. So I don't agree with the way they express certain things, but I get the sentiment. I get the sentiment, and it's frustrating when people around you just have their heads in the sand. Like, you just have your heads in the sand. You want to believe a delusion that doesn't exist and pretend like everything is going fine while things get worse and worse and worse. And, you know, like the Wahhabism problem, the sectarian problem, the feminist problem, like these are things in my wheelhouse. The liberalism problem. These are things that I am shocked every day that where is the effort to solve these problems? Where is the effort to, like, institutionally, like, where are the millions of dollars to like put towards these problems, like the kind of expertise to address these problems? And it's non-existent. So that's very frustrating, because it's like, and what is supported, like what it does get funded, like what does get that kind of attention and support, slop. Like in many cases it's just slop, or it's just stuff that is meant to feed into the egotistical delusions of some Muslims that have their heads in the stand. That's very frustrating. Like, and you look at other communities and they don't have the same problems. Like, they do dedicate like institutions and multi-million-dollar funding and you know, massive efforts to preserve their interests, like for their specific community, to prioritize these intellectual challenges, these geopolitical and intellectual challenges, strategic challenges that they are dedicating themselves to solve. The community is dedicated to solve with millions of dollars, you know, establishing think tanks, establishing these kinds of organizations. Does that exist for Muslims? No. Does that exist for us? No. And it's not for lack of resources. It's lack of will. We don't have the political will. We don't have the... So is that a failure? Yes. Is that a shame? Yes. And if you express that, if you say that, then people get more mad at you. So that's my perspective. What do you think of the new Dawah Center in Texas? Which Dawah Center is this? I don't know. There's like new Dawah Centers being propped up every other week. So, like, a new building has gone up. I'm sure that's going to really change the situation. The Muslim Tracker says there's an issue with our mentality and how we approach things. The Western campaign is not only to fault, we have to acknowledge a lot is our own fault individually and communally. We are in dysfunction. I mean, wasn't that part of the analysis that I gave you about how the occupation and continued war on terror, forever wars in the Middle East can't happen without Muslim collaborators with the US? These countries collaborating with the US, like, that's a key linchpin of their ability to dominate us. So yeah, you can't just blame the imperial powers. Like, yeah, they have the majority of the blame, but they have like collaborators, and part of the problem is Wahhabism, it's sectarianism, it's our own spiritual problems. Okay, 3.5 hours. I think that's good enough for today's show. It's an exciting show. We had surprise guest. SNEAKO was not planned at all, but enjoyed talking to him. Hope you enjoyed everything. Oh, the lantern went out here. I guess the battery in the lamp is not as strong as it used to be. So when the lantern goes out, that means the show has been long enough. Okay. So I hope you enjoyed it. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel, like the video, leave a comment. If you haven't already, subscribe to our newsletter. The link is in the description below. Inshallah, I'll be back next week, and we'll have a good show for you next week. Hopefully, there'll be stuff for us to talk about. If not, I'll just do more feminist TikTok reactions and give analysis for that. But yeah, I really appreciate all of your super chats and the commentary. And we will see you, inshallah, on the next episode. I believe that's all I had for you. Yeah, and just make dua about the situation with Iran and the US, that it doesn't create a domino effect where we fall into global economic collapse. I guess these are the kinds of dua that we need to be making. Make dua for the Palestinians. Still, you know, Israel is, despite a ceasefire agreement, is still bombing daily in Gaza. And the news cycle just doesn't care anymore. Like, there's no headlines anymore about Palestinians getting murdered on a daily basis during a quote-unquote ceasefire with peace, you know, the peace agreement brokered by some of these Gulf countries. So, yeah, make dua for Palestine and all of our Muslim brothers and sisters. May Allah protect all of us. And, yeah, and I'll see you on next week, inshallah. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.